This is the regular meeting of Darien Parks and Recreation Commission, Wednesday, August 21st. First item of business is the approval of minutes from our last two meetings, June 19th and July 17th. Let's do the 19th first. We did not do these last one because the hour got late and it was very long and well-attended meetings. So I did have some comments on these, but why don't let other people give what they have first?
So, I was not in attendance.
Okay.
I stuck around at the committee meeting, so.
Right, okay.
It has me, no, but it has me in attendance.
I got it.
So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Others? Carrie?
I was not in attendance in the June meeting.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, on the June meeting?
She said we're starting with the June meeting?
She's just saying she
You're
wasn't.
absent though.
I was
She's
absent.
just saying she has
sorry, I
some
haven't
comments because she wasn't
Oh.
here to
That
comment.
makes sense, sorry.
Sarah or any?
I looked over it, I didn't see anything. It jumped out at me.
Okay, well, I had a few things, so here we go. Just page, I'll give this to you after, it's just page 2, there's a typo in the middle of page, the word during, not during, like the word during. In a section on the Wee Beach Improvement Project, about the middle of the paragraph, it says, Ms. Geary added that the town is also supporting the project by doing anything in-house. I think we should say any of the work. Something like anything.
Fair.
Yes.
And then on page 3, the last sentence of this section says, they would need to go through town approvals, but would not have to go to the RTM for approval, and I don't think that's correct. I think the RTM needs to accept the gift?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So.
Yes, would have to.
Yeah, so that's just not accurate, I don't think.
Okay.
And then in the naming section, it says, Ms. Geary asked about the determined name. I think maybe we should say possible name because it was still under discussion. Determined implies it was a done deal. And perhaps put in that several names have been proposed.
Okay.
Page 4, the top paragraph, see the commission approves the support partner with the pollinator pathway to get as many of our parks. I think it's to be included in the pathway as opposed to pledge. This is on the pollinator pathway. Where do we know? Right here. Is our parks to pledge, or do we want to say to be included in the pathway?
Yeah, it's me.
I think to be included in the pathway. On the Eagle Scout, second line, the Scout's last name is spelled differently than in the other places. Just want to correct that. On the, you with me, am I going too fast?
Well, if you're gonna give me yours,
Okay.
that's fine. I just
Okay.
I'll mark something if I'm afraid I won't know what you're talking about.
Okay. On the smoking ban, it refers to the chief. We should probably just put police chief, just for clarity, that that's what we're talking about. And then in the middle says, I referenced the need to change the verbiage. I think that's because Pam had put something in our package. I think we should say that, really is what I proposed verbiage. I handed out proposed verbiage, which is what we decided to go with. And then after the effective 30 days, I just think we should reference that that's per the town code. It says any rule change would become effective in 30 days. I think we should add that's per town code. That's because we made that up because we. To bottom of page 5, public comment. This is quoting Adele. The grammar says playground as well as the gate get fixed that is broken. I think so as the gate that is broken get fixed. And on my report, It's not the harbor master meeting, it's, I refer to it as the harbor commission meeting. Technically, it's the commission on coastal,
Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters.
also known as the harbor commission, but technically not. And then later on that page, we were talking about the Weed Beach Fest, and you have that I reported that the residents on Near Water Lane experienced no issues. What I said is that as a resident of Near Water Lane, that I had experienced no issues. I cannot comment on any and all residents in Near Water Lane. And that's pretty much it. I scribbled out a couple typo things. That's it.
I actually did have one small thing.
Okay, thank you.
And that's on page 2. Just talks about, expressed how everyone was very excited. I think you could just leave it, and it's small, but you could just leave it at excited.
Where is it?
Yeah, I could just pass it on. It's
Okay.
on page 2. I don't know.
Okay.
So, if I can have a motion to approve the minutes with the proposed changes. Sarah, second? Amy, thank you. All in favor? Here's Lucy, fresh off the train. Okay, so we're good on that? Okay, next we have the July 17th minutes. So I don't have this, who wants to go first? Yes, I do this for everything, so.
I have a small item. On page 4, the discussion of Tier's, the reference to Tier's survey. It's really, I would, she's not here, but she'd probably characterize it as an informal survey.
I was gonna say, I had the same comment, I was gonna say, she just mentioned about 20 families, I was doing
Yeah, I
about 20
think
families.
we just
To give a sense
reaching
of
out to my
scale.
network of
Okay, yeah.
friends.
I'd just like to add that I was present in the audience at this meeting July 17th.
Mm.
So Mike, you didn't pick up that your name's spelled wrong?
Oh.
Dang it. Under the attendance.
Oh, yeah.
Big catch.
And in that same attendance section, Randy should be also listed as co-chair of the parent committee. Did you have Mike?
Oh, yeah, I'm twice,
Oh, you
yeah.
did have it. Oh, that's why, okay.
That's so fun. You were thinking Jamie Gore.
Oh, and under absent, it says co-chair and then Pear Tree Building Committee, Tom Bell. The co-chair should come out of there. Maybe it's landed in the wrong place.
He's actually secretary.
Right, he is actually secretary. Okay. Anyone else? Top of page 2, I think Salem Straits is spelled wrong. I think it's S-T-R-A-I-T-S. No, Salem Straits.
Yes, it's correct.
STRAITS.
That's what I thought. Oh, I guess that's you. There you go. I didn't think that was correct. Just, very last sentence on page 2, it says the Daring Foundation to improve the short lane area as well as create a trail that connects the, oh, it says new parcel, it's not a new parcel, it's just a parcel. I would take out the word middle.
Mike's name is spelled wrong on page 3 again.
Oh, I missed that one. Yeah, also on the bottom of page 3, it talks about the joint meeting. It says from the professional as well as have the opportunity to clear up any confusion. I think it would be helpful to say any confusion regarding the building committee's objectives. Be more specific on where confusion might have been lying.
Actually, the commission's objectives.
Thank you. That's more accurate. That's all I had.
Hey, Scott. There are two chairs
Oh,
over
right,
here.
right, I see,
It's
yeah.
actually a little more
Gotcha.
comfortable than mine, thank you.
Anybody else? Mike, have you
No.
spelled any wrong? Okay, if I can have a motion?
Yes.
Eric? Second? Sarah? Okay, all in favor? Okay, the next item on the agenda was our Boy Scout, but we do not appear to have our Boy Scout. So I guess we will put that aside. Who's spoke and confirmed his attendance?
I remember by email.
Okay. So we will put that aside and, move him later in the agenda, if and when he appears. The next item on the agenda is to discuss and take action on the commercial skiff that has been, tied to the dock. And I see Roger, Johnny Frater here, I'm guessing you
My son Roger,
your son
Judy.
Roger,
Yes.
just kind of putting this together. So you all received, hold on, I just wanna switch my packets around. So the request, I think you received the background, but this came up because, Pam did receive a complaint from a town resident who felt that the skiff, the way it was parked on a certain day, had blocked his access and his ability to utilize the ramp. And therefore did some research, and correctly pointed out that that is in violation of the specific parks rules. Didn't really have any of the background. Pam did some research, back to 2012, when the commission granted use of the dock, a certain section of the dock, on the off-season from, I think it's November 1st to the end of April. Mid-April. That was in 2012, the commission was to revisit it annually, that never happened. And, at this time, correct me if it seems like you're using it 12 months of the year and tying up the skip. So, Jamie reached out to us, and I assume you're here and will want to speak at some point, perhaps, no, or not necessarily?
Only if needed.
Okay, if needed, and has asked the commission to consider allowing the Freights to continue to tie the skiff up to the Pear Tree Dock. You've actually come back and asked to tie 2 skiffs up, so I'm gonna wanna really hear about that and understand it, understand what your alternatives are. I went down there, walked around, took a look, it looks like the second one is on that beach or sloping section of the boat club, kinda tied up with lines, which I know with the tides is probably tricky. So, I think maybe you're here, we'll ask you to address the commission, provide any background that you'd like to, and then we can talk about it. I think everybody was provided with some pictures that were supplied by the resident, et cetera.
First of all, I apologize for the inconvenience that we parked the boat in the wrong place. But the problem is, you know, that the dock is filled in with mud. So when we come in, if it's low tide, we can't get the tram around back, okay? So it's not often, but it's quite a bit, you know, so we park it at the edge. Now, while we moved the second boat there, and I didn't know, I thought we had permission, but we park it, you see now on the side, the small boat sitting right here. You can look at it on the side of the slope of the sidewalks. Well, the boat club dredged over the years. At the time I needed a new knee, I got one, now I need another new knee. I can't get up that hill. And they had dredged so steep that when we put the boats there, the harbor master said, look at the boats on the fingers, they put new fingers that go towards the parking lot. They can't get around, you can't keep the boats there. So we tried to make it put it north-south, which you couldn't do anyways. Now, if you came in at dead low, the boats couldn't get out. So, I mean, I want my son to talk, he's got pictures of the boats the way they are. And we thought everything was fine, we had a heck of a time. keeping the boats there. The small boat was put there, and I apologize, I didn't know we didn't have permission, because I've been fighting these chemicals. I'm president of West Side Long Island Sound since 1999, and with Senator Gunther and Blumenthal, and all these people going all over the country trying to straighten the sound out. So, when this happened,
Do you mind speaking up? It's a little hard to hear you.
pardon?
It's a little
Stand
hard
up,
to hear you.
Stand up? Okay, then I'll show you these pictures. Here it is, here's that one picture, right? Here's another picture, you can see the tide, and here's the fingers, the new fingers they put in. Now, our boat's sitting there at dead low. The fingers can't come out, the boats can't come out. Now here's just, my son's got better pictures, but here's one picture of the edge of the dock. We have to go around here and put the boats in at low tide, come around, it's all mud. And he's dredging something, look at the dock's on mud. So when we come in like that, in the wintertime, there's no problem. Summertime, we can't put it over there, so the boat could dredge. And the parking lot, I mean, it's falling in, you know, they went too far steep towards the boat club. I know my father was Park and Recreation Commissioner for 20 years, I got a parking lot there. He built that boat club and gave it to the town for $1 a year. We had boats there since the 50s, you know, boats that go out to our boats. Matter of fact, we had the first boat, the cop boat is now. And, you know, he used to, when they dredged, Walt Sager was a town engineer. I worked for the town from the, 61 to 75. And they would have a line going from the road to the sidewalk and 50 feet out. Because I remember the town engineer said they need another $50,000 to build the boat ramp right, boat club parking lot right. If you dredge like they've done the boat club, it's falling in. So they dredged, you know, because they're all dead, you know. They dredged all the way down to the boat club, came 30 feet from the parking lot, put new fingers out. Now we can't dock there, we can't pull the boats up. Our rats want us to pull the boats up, we can't do it, you know. So we put it, I mean, we're wrong, but what are we supposed to do? I mean, we were there, you know, years and years and years. We're not here to make trouble. Now, there's one guy who complained, geez, I wish he could have called me at the store. I would have run down and moved the boat, you know? So I don't know what else to say, you know? I'm sorry about it, but it needs dredging. You let us keep it there. Or if we put it there, the police don't want it there, where the fingers are, you know? I don't know if the boat club got permission to put the fingers that way. I know when they were trying to get more permission to go down the harbor, I think there was about 3 docks illegally, right? And we didn't want to make any trouble, you know? So we apologize, but we wish we can keep 2 boats there, because when we get there at high tide, then in the morning it's low tide, it's in the mud. So we actually take that small boat, take the motor off, put it on the dock, and carry the pram over the dock. And come back at the end of the day to get the clams. We tried to make it one time, 50 bushels of clams, they sunk, someone flew by him in the harbor, he sunk right down there, 50 bushels of clams.
What happened?
You know, a lot of people fly down that harbor. Now he had, what was it, 50 bushels, Roger?
Yeah.
52 bushels. The clams on the side of the big boat, stacking them in, and a boat flew by.
Not your big boat, you mean the larger
The
skiff.
pram, the smaller skiff.
But you're saying somebody
Right
put
there,
it in a
right,
no
right.
wake zone and
Just-
they
They
And
fly
sunk it.
by there.
And
We
we
don't
love
sing
them.
anything, we don't want any trouble, you know? We love the boats. I mean, now we love the boat club, you know, because my father built it, and he gave it to the town for $1 a year. I can remember him talking to the old mayor, Chick Kerrigan, back then. He always felt, when the town had money, they should take it back. You know? Back then, they had no money. So what he had said back then, I listened to him, he was Park and Recreation Commissioner. I was a lifeguard for a few years, then worked on the park, the rec for, I don't know how many years, cut grass and all that other stuff. So we go back a long time, we sure don't want to make trouble, you know? We had boats sunk out there, you know, along with the commercial fishing business, you know? My son's been with me since the age of 17, fishing, honor roll student. He's gonna be 51 October 2nd, one of the best fishermen in Long Island Sound, and we're getting pushed right out of it, you know? All the good old people are dead in the state, plain English.
Yeah.
Right there.
Roger.
Let Roger talk about it.
Yeah, I was just wondering, yeah, I know you've been in town for many, many years, how come you don't have dock space at the boat club.
They don't allow commercial boats there. That's one of the laws they made when they built the club.
Okay. So that's prohibited.
These are just our access skiffs to get to our
Yes,
larger
yeah,
boats.
yeah.
And I think it's gotta be distinguished that where we park or asking to park the skiffs is in between the public boat launch dock and the road, which is used by nobody, and half the time it's mud.
So I actually have a map.
Yes,
Can you, I have two questions.
sure.
One, can you kind of just show us on the map?
Yeah.
And the second question is, what is a finger?
Finger is one little,
It's a dot?
It's one of these.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not a sailor.
okay, on the map, it would be this dock right here.
Is where you are
Yeah, on the
now?
roadside, between this little piece of land and the dock, that little V in there. And when the boats launch with their cars or trucks, they come in this side.
Okay,
What happened was I came in one day, it was extremely low tide due to a full moon, and I left the boat right at the
at
end
the
here.
end, which is her picture.
Yes, and the motor was hanging over, and I guess the family came in at low tide and couldn't
And they
get their
couldn't get
boat into,
Okay.
because virtually only this little space is available at low tide. This is all just ramp at low tide.
So normally you park your boat here. or
In
you
here, yeah.
dock your boat.
Yes,
Sorry, you dock your boat in there.
yeah,
And with your two skiffs, you want to dock both there now?
yes.
And there's room for?
Yeah, we've
How are you
virtually,
gonna do that?
virtually done it for the last 5 years.
Side by side or
No,
front
no,
and back?
front and back.
And they're gonna fit with the mud?
Yeah, well, they sit in mud half the time. That's the issue.
Okay.
Um,
Because I went down last week, I
Right.
walked it after work last week, and
Right.
it happened to be, it was low tide.
The only, our other option was, we kept our boats over on that hill, during the season.
Yeah.
But what was happening is, at low tide, our boats were down far, blocking the access from the boat club members coming around that inner spot.
Yeah, no, I did look at it, and I took my husband with me, because he can tie up a boat like nobody's.
And I was
business.
actually-
He was like, if they go this way, they got this
Yeah.
problem, if they go this way, they got that problem, and,
We were approached by the Darien Marine Police back in 2012 and the harbor master, because actually the harbor master couldn't get his boat out one Sunday because our skiffs were blocking him. And the consensus was, keep them on the inside of the dock, keep them out of everybody's way, and it should be
We
okay.
should have told you people,
But,
instead of Jamie, you know,
Question,
I
so
Yeah.
is this just what happened with this person who wrote the complaint, is this just a one-off thing that you just happened to be in the wrong
Yeah.
place at the wrong
Yes.
time?
Yes.
And that normally that you
Yeah,
would be
they're,
docked
they're
on the
there,
side?
they're there year round, no one said a word.
Did those two spots work for you with, I mean, you mentioned with the mud, with.
Yeah, I mean, it's
can you
inconvenient
find
at
your
low
business
tides
with-
for
low
us.
tides?
Sometimes we gotta get out and just muscle them out of there.
Yeah,
But it's a lot better than the alternative, which is that hill. And that hill used to have more access, but the Darien Boat Club bought a good portion of it a few years back. So we're jammed right on the corner where the sidewalk is and the end of the boat club slips. There's no, once our boats are down there, we're a barrier for a good 40 boats trying to get out of that. So we thought we were making life better for everyone, but it was my mistake. I'll see it.
So, I have some more questions.
go ahead.
So, my understanding is that our setup was that it was a certain time frame. I think you said,
November through mid-April.
okay, and you've been doing it all year.
Yeah,
Okay, so that dock is supposed to be, available to people landing, to our citizens landing, right, all the time?
Right.
So, do they have any other options besides that dock?
Do they have any
To put, no, citizens, with boating, could they have gone someplace else if the dock was blocked?
No,
That was the only spot they
Right.
could go to,
they were trying to get out.
they were trying to get out with
Get their boat out of the
They
way.
had been out on the water and they were returning.
No, they were returning, right?
Right.
Not trying to
They're
get out.
returning,
They're
no,
getting
returning.
out.
Right,
They're trying to get it, right, they're trying to get, but
Boat
they
out
were
of the
coming
water.
back in.
yes.
So they had no other place to dock but that spot,
It wasn't a
It was
dock.
docking, they were getting it in the parking lot to trailer it.
out,
Yes.
Of the water.
yeah.
But
Out of the
there's-
water.
But there's no other place they could have done that.
No.
That's the only.
We'll have one way
place.
through.
Okay, and was the original setup so that, done for timing purposes, so that people could do that easily? Or what was the purpose of the timing of them not being able to use the dock in the summertime?
I don't think any of us in this room know the answer to that question specifically, because it was in 2012. I don't know, the only person who
When
was.
that dock
Busy
was,
season,
Yeah,
that's probably
Susan.
when
why.
that dock was
Made
built,
wrong. Made wrong.
Well, I read
not
Susan's
just that.
notes, Susan
What
said
was it?
notes
So
from
developed.
meeting notes,
Right.
and there wasn't anything in there, so I wanted to,
We don't know more than what's in those notes. I mean, I don't know if there was any feeling that if somebody was in the process of either launching or pulling their boat out and somebody else wanted to use the dock and was queuing up, that they could go on the back side and maybe unload their belongings while they were waiting. Practically speaking, I don't know if that would happen or not.
it sounds like it was an isolated incident, and it sounds like they're gonna fix it up and make it work. And they've never gotten another complaint, right?
Not why I've been here.
I just wanted to understand
Got a
how
little
the whole
tide,
thing
you
was
can't,
working,
you can't
so
launch a
that,
motor, take a boat out there now, it's just, soot, it looks mud, you know?
yeah,
Needs
so,
dredging.
yeah, so now you're asking for permission for 2 and year round, and that's what we're trying to.
on the inside.
Inside, on the east side, the road side, nobody uses. That's
Okay,
the permission you gave
that's
us.
what they're asking, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to understand what we
Yes,
were gonna
I
vote
know.
on.
We'll show that picture, you know?
Other members of the commission, questions?
I'd just like to point out that this is the first time in 5 years that we've had a complaint, and reading the notes from 2012 from the former, your predecessor, so there have been no former complaints, and you've been doing this for over 50 years, right? So I think that should just be taken into consideration as an exception.
I did speak to both Harbor Master Bell about this, and I also spoke to the chair of the Commission on Coastal Waters, whatever we call ourselves, even though I'm on it. And neither expressed any objection. So just would have that for the record. And Jamie, who's here, may speak or not, but she did in fact send the commission a letter of support. So I did want to make that. You know, certainly the one thing that's on my mind is we, as you probably know, are in the process of doing a significant improvement project to the park. One of the facets of that is in fact the rebuilding of that ramp, which I'm not an engineer, but I would assume that when that happens, would make it unusable or not there for some amount of time. So we need to be aware of that, and whether that area gets dredged and would make the side you're using more accessible for recreational boaters, and therefore that this could create a problem down the road. I can't say at this point, but it could be an issue going down the road. So I did want you to be aware of that. I know your options seem to be quite limited. But I just don't know enough about the engineering and how that will all work, but that is definitely one of the deliverables of the building committee in this project. It's because I think it's pretty well understood that that ramp was not built properly, and the accessibility of low tide for the residents of Tenant causes some real problems. So we do have to keep that in mind. I do personally think that this should not be an indefinite situation, that it should be year to year. One of the things Pam and I have been working on is building a schedule for the commission so that in any given month, we know what items need to be taken up. So this would definitely go on there so the commission doesn't lose sight of it for 7 years, because it was supposed to be revisited annually and it wasn't. So, you know, that's just the nature of these types of groups, is that there's personnel turnover and, you know, you lose without the institutional memory. So we would have to take that into account. And the other thing I think that there's been some discussion about is whether we should be charging some sort of, you know, fee for the use, you know, for the use of the dock. Pam did look, and I guess you don't buy the trailering sticker because you're not going in and out. So I think that may be something the commission should think about, at least some kind of modest fee for the usage of it. So just thoughts of folks in general. I did also check with Pam and Kate, because our rules are very explicit that this is not allowed, so then we have to think about how we would affect that. One option is to change the rules. The other, which Kate thought was preferable, was to update our rules to explain how exceptions to the rules can be made. And then we would effectively be voting on and approving an exception as opposed to, personally, I don't think it would be good to actually put this in the rules. But that really, it would be more to, so that will take a rewrite of our rules.
Or our
Which we-
exception rules.
Well, of the rules to allow, in the
An
rules.
exception.
No, I think the rules would be rewritten to discuss in general how exceptions to the rules, any of the rules are made, because it doesn't have that. So, and then that would allow the commission from time to time for any
To make exceptions.
variety of reasons to make exceptions, but right now, they don't, there's things that you can't do.
Yeah, it makes good sense.
So that is something that we're not going to be able to accomplish this evening. So I think for tonight's purposes, we would perhaps have to vote on this at least, I mean, at this point, the summer season is, sadly waning away.
It could be grandfathered in, could it?
No, because the minutes were pretty explicit that it was from November 1st to mid-April, and it would be revisited annually. So, and the way it's written was kind of squishy in terms of, it didn't really tie it back to the park rules well. So I think we should do this, longer term, I think we should do it properly. So we may want to consider some interim measure this evening, and then we need to work on the rules, which I've been talking to all of you about anyway, that generally the park rules need to be refreshed and updated. They've kind of been added to, and at some point you've just got to take the document and start fresh and clean it up. So we do need to do that. So I think it might make more sense to do something at least an interim. The summer's almost over. I think we've all heard that once you get through voting season, it's really not going to be an issue. And as Erica points out, we have not had a lot of complaints anyway. And that would give us over the winter to get the rules cleaned up and then kind of formally document it and determine how often we want to revisit it.
So how do we move this forward for them?
I think we should entertain a motion to, on some sort of interim basis or whatever, allow the freights to continue, or to use the dock.
So we'd say from today until October 31st.
At this
Because
point, we could
the
probably go till-
exception is-
At this point, we could probably go till next.
Right, but then
Spring.
we already have that they're allowed to do it from November 1st, right?
No, because
No.
Not with
maybe
two
yes,
votes.
maybe no, because that was voted on for 1 year,
Yeah.
7 years
Sure.
ago. So, not really, so.
Yeah.
But I'm just suggesting at this point, we could go till mid-April anyway, because
Nobody's gonna be using it.
it will be a non-issue.
Well, it should be whatever you forecast us revisiting the rules that time should get to.
I mean, I want us to start getting into that in the fall.
Yeah,
That's gonna happen. But that would give us some.
so that would give us coverage.
I think so,
Yeah.
So, get that done before next spring. So, I think that might be the best way to go on that. And that would give us time to kind of get our own house in order. So we're trying to kind of reorganize and structure things a little bit differently in terms of how the commission is run. You've been very quiet over there.
I'm listening.
It's not like you. Anything? No?
No. No, I'm ready for a vote.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay, so I need somebody to make, and then I did bring up the idea of charging a fee, what's the feeling about that, or you just?
I think if you charge because this is a special situation for the freights, I
Mhm.
think if you charge a fee, then it allows other possible special situations to come forward. This is uniquely suited for them. So, I don't know what kind of fee you were thinking about, but I wouldn't be inclined to charge a fee in general, because I think it sets precedent for later, for other people coming in wanting to pay fees. It's like, well, they paid a fee, why can't I pay a fee? What's the difference between them? And my money is the same as theirs, so what's the difference? I think this is a one-off for them, we should look at the rules and then determine whether we wanna charge a fee going forward.
Other thoughts on that?
I agree with you.
I agree with you. I agree also.
Yeah.
And I think, when the rules are revisited, I think they need to be worded in such a way that it's clear that this is a one-off and you're not kind of opening, I think the suggestion, we're not opening the door to a possibility of this being available to others at some point in the future. You know, it's kind of a decision that was made for historical purposes at the sole discretion of the commission, and, you know, close the door on the possibility of somebody thinking there's an invitation to kind of make a pitch for that space. Just a thought, but I agree in terms of, I don't think in this circumstances it warrants a fee.
Then, I would ask that somebody make a motion.
A motion.
You need to make like the motion.
I'll make a motion to approve. Make a motion to approve, to vote.
But we have to word the motion.
Sorry.
We have to word the motion. Jamie needs to write something down. She's like, help me here. I think we want a motion to elect, do you want it in the name of the Freights, the name of Dairy and Seafood? How would you like to be referred to?
Freights.
Freight?
Yeah, Freights, the large ones.
So I think the motion is to extend the permission to, right? Because we're talking about an extension.
I don't know if it's an extension or not, because
Well,
technically
it sounds like it's an extension
expired.
through April, I think, if I understood what you were kind of suggesting earlier. I think I thought, my
See,
impression was you
technically, I
wanted
don't
to,
think they have approval right now because it was done in 2012 for a limited time and was supposed to be revisited, so I think it's
How
really.
about this, how about if we take Jamie's letter, which authorized the skiff to be, I authorize you to dock your skiff on the south side of the town park, from the time period beginning today, August 7th, until the Park and Recreation Commission has had the opportunity to discuss the matter on their next meeting, today, August 21st. So how about if we say, you don't want to put words in your mouth.
No,
but,
no, you.
If we propose to extend the permission granted by the first selectman.
No, we gotta stop there. Jamie has no authority,
Okay.
really.
So
She
our-
came to
so-
me on an
okay,
interim
I
basis
understand that.
because only the commission can grant the authority.
Okay, great. So, did you grant authority? Did we grant authority for this period?
I made an executive decision to grant Jamie the authority for
Okay,
2
so
weeks to
based
allow
on
him
that,
to continue
so
to do
based on the
so.
temporary authority that was given in the month of August 2019, we propose to extend the time period until April 2020, during which time, do you wanna say that, during which time we will conduct a?
Do we have the date on it?
I could just say April 30th, 2020 to
Right.
allow the Freights to tie 2 commercial skiffs.
Mm.
We call them skiffs?
Yes. Yes.
I think at which point you'll make a determination
Right.
pertaining to that permission
Right.
into the future or something to that effect, right?
Skiffs, to the north side? I'm really bad with directions.
South.
South?
East.
East.
Southeast.
The road side, east.
Okay, the southeast
Between the road and the
dock,
dock.
right, of the Pear Tree Boat Launch.
The only thing I'm wondering about is the name, because I think it's, we're doing this because of your business. And I don't know the full name of your business. Is it Dairy and Seafood? What is it?
Dairy and Seafood or Jennifer LLC is the clam and lobsters and oysters.
Okay, so if we are doing this, we should consider putting it in the business name as opposed to their private name.
Because it's the
Commercial.
commercial need, because it's the commercial need.
Well, skiffs are registered to a private name, not commercial
They're not
business.
commercial. The big boats are commercial.
I would suggest we use the name that has been used historically, when
Which
the
is-
permission was originally granted, at least to be
For
consistent,
continuity.
and then,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Okay,
Yeah,
and
that
what
here.
was it, it was free, what was it?
Yeah, it's right here.
We have a certificate of insurance on file too.
Roger Freight, to commercial fisherman Roger Freight.
Well, maybe we just have to specify that it's for commercial
I
purposes.
think so.
Use it for commercial purposes.
How about Freight Senior, Freight Junior? He's the one running the boat.
I think we just have to specify that it's for commercial
Commercial
purposes.
purposes,
I think we can say the freight family.
I think that'll cover us.
I do think we should get a certificate of insurance, naming the town as additional insurance.
When the last lobster,
Okay,
when the
yes,
last lobster fisherman in Darien started the logbook, started Avery Point University, Connecticut University, from Long Island Sound right here.
okay. Did you hear what Pam said about needing, that she recommends a certificate of insurance?
Naming the town as an additional insured. Okay, so we should have that on file every year.
Okay.
Okay. so that if someone hurts themselves on your boat or something.
Or the dock gets flooded.
Because they are right there too, I mean, anybody can hop on that boat and
Oh, it's not.
off they go.
Oh, that's
Make it happen.
Okay, I'm sorry, all right, let's go back, let's focus. So Jamie, do you have it written down?
Good enough,
Or do you wanna just, I think maybe if you could read, if you could read.
Yeah,
I think we can review the.
I just think if
So
you
does
could
that
read
go
it back.
under Erica?
Yes.
The motion?
Okay, okay, but should we just read it back, just because it's kind of.
Vaguely what you have.
So based on the temporary authority granted to the freights for commercial purposes through April 30th, 2020, utilizing the southeast between the road and dock for both of the skips.
Is it a dock or a ramp?
It's a
It's a
dock.
dock.
Can you,
Ramp.
can you
It's a
change it
dock.
from
It's a
both skips
dock.
to 2 skips, so it's very specific?
It's a dock.
Amy?
It's a
It's
dock.
a
So, yeah, they said
It's a
Okay, I
dock.
said both.
Yeah, Amy,
It's a dock.
there's a ramp, and then adjacent to the ramp, there's a dock.
Here,
Okay.
it's in here.
And this is actually the
It's
space
dock.
between the dock and the road.
Yes, it's right in there.
Okay.
Can I make one other suggestion? If you could
Yes.
take it under advisement.
Yes, everybody, please.
Yeah, I'd just make one other suggestion, and just take it under advisement, to maybe draft a letter that you would send then to the freights, just to kind of, just to,
Yes.
that, but also just kind of making note of the fact that there is an anticipated project at the beach, on that dock, on the ramp, that may have an impact on your ability to access that space.
We've lived through 4 or 5 of those.
Yeah, but just kind of so,
Yeah, I know.
something that's out there, and, but
Maybe-
it does sound to me like that may have an impact on your ability to do your business.
Right,
if you don't have
but at that time's usually the off-season, so we can make other
Well, at
arrangements.
this point, we're just not really sure the timing of that,
Yeah.
and like
I think
theoretically.
the dredging's
it should
not allowed during the season anyways,
be- Fair enough.
Okay, so Pam, you and I will work on.
but thank you.
Okay, so Lucy, that was your motion?
No, it's Erica's.
But you make the
Say it.
motion, I'll second it.
All right, I make the motion.
I second it.
Okay, all right. All those in favor? Okay, so we will do that. We will revisit in the spring. I will not forget. You see me often, so you know I will not forget.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, very much.
Lori?
Again, we apologize for any inconvenience to this.
Yeah, the problem is, it needs dredging.
We know,
We
we
had no
know.
problem putting it on the ramp, the small boat, because there's no way we can drag that big boat. Now we got the harbor master and the police after us. We're in the way, you know?
No, we understand the dredging. That is the latest. We're working on it. Jamie?
2 things. Would you please make sure that the harbor master and the Darien Marine Police are made aware first thing tomorrow morning of your action? And I want to thank you for the commission's support for this very unique local business.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We're out of business, we can't keep them all there. Yeah. But we fight with the harbor master and the police, keep them on together, that's what happened. Years ago, they were gonna build us a dock, coming from the road, just a couple of boats right there. The big boat, down the harbor, but I think it got a little squashed.
Well, I think we're good for now,
Thank you
and
very much.
we will continue the conversation.
If you have any problems, even if, like this person called us up, you know,
Okay.
we had a problem, I'm gonna come down and move the boat.
Yeah,
I
and
got
maybe we need to make sure that the guards know, because that was part of the issue, is the guard claimed that family who was having a challenge that he had no idea who the skip belonged to.
Would they know how to call you? Do you have your number on the boat or something that they could see it if there was an issue? I don't know if that would help you. I offered
Put a
a
phone number?
suggestion.
Yeah, we can do
I
that.
can paint phone number right
I
on.
mean,
Why not?
just that way somebody might just call you and it won't
Yeah.
become a big thing.
Anytime, you know?
Yeah,
It's a good idea.
they just put a sticker on it or something.
They might call you to find out what's coming into it. How are you gonna handle Ms. Christian? You gonna write her back or?
Pam has responded to me.
Okay. And will you let them know what we decided? Yes. That's great, 'cause she is a good reference, lots of information.
Great. I think we are ready to move on. And I see our Boy Scout has arrived, somehow slipped in during the conversation.
Yeah, I actually went to Wheat Beach.
Oh.
I was spotting cowboats.
But you figured it out, you're back.
I would rather be at Wheat Beach, trust me. I like our meetings at Wheat Beach, but alas. let Carson collect and get set up for a minute.
Thanks again.
So, I updated the packets.
Oh, they're both done. Got it.
So I added the part about implementing it into master plan as well as dimensions.
She does, she was survey.
She has a distant meeting in 20 years.
I know, she lives with her mom all the time, she really.
I don't know if those guys have an update.
Everyone get one?
Okay, I don't know if they did. Lucy, did you guys get the update? Okay. Carson, are you ready? You rock and roll? Okay, all right. I give everybody's attention to our Eagle Scout candidate. This is your Eagle project, not Eagle Scout. Yeah, Eagle Scout project. If you could run us through what your proposal is.
Sure.
Why you're proposing it, selected this, how it fits into the commission's plan for the parks, et cetera. That would be really helpful.
Sure. So I came to the meeting, the last meeting, and I heard that there were some problems with signage, and so we talked about Weed Beach, and so I went around to all the parks and I looked at all the different boards, and Miss Dolly, she told me which parks that they liked the boards of and which ones they didn't, so I could get like a quality control. And so at Cherry Lawn, I also found like different trails by the ponds that were kind of not really marked or didn't really have a sign either. And I thought that Weed Beach and Cherry Lawn, since in the master plan they're both planning to add and improve the trails there, I thought that it might be a good idea to implement signage there with these outdoor bulletin boards. And so in the master plan for the key issues and recommendations, I believe it says that they're looking for a need to advertise new information for programs and stuff, and I thought that would also be a really good place to put them, as well as just information on the trails, on the park, stuff like that. So the bulletin boards would be about 67 inches lengthwise, 5.5 inches widthwise, and 105 inches heightwise. You can see the reference photos for Woodland Park, Cherry Lawn, both at Cherry Lawn and Celtics Park, and these were recommended to me by Miss Valley. So as you can see, implementation, as well as where the materials and would come from, the quality of the materials, as well as how they would be attained, and they would be attained probably through donations by companies. I haven't talked to companies yet. I'm waiting for approval for that because I don't want to get too far ahead. I talked to another Eagle Scout that was applying, and that got approved, and he said that he got his donations from like local companies, so I'm thinking about doing that. And then I would organize a bunch of volunteers, probably scouts. We all help each other out, as well as family members, to help implement it and install it. Yep. Do you have any questions?
How were the dimensions decided, Pam? Is this similar to ones that we have now?
The first
Dimension?
4 are all existing, aren't they?
Yes.
These first
Right.
4 are all these, the first one's currently at Woodland, second one's currently at Community Garden, third one's currently right behind the Nature Center, and the
Yep.
fourth one is at the entrance to Select Spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all very similar, I'm familiar with all of them, they're all very
Yeah.
similar in size, yeah.
And
And that's the size you're using, I think that's.
I just based it off of, I just kind
What was
of
their approximate?
measured all of them and then approximated like what a good size would be for the next one.
So it would be basically the same size as this?
Basically, yes. I'm basing it off of the Celtics Parks one mainly. I just want to give extra reference photos.
Looks like it has maps on
And it looks
It's,
as
it's
if,
under the trees.
it's determined,
it. It's a green
it's to be
roof.
determined exactly what the
Very
locations
green.
are gonna be.
It's a power wash.
So I think that he hasn't determined exact locations, but I think
Yeah,
that's something
We
that
need to talk. and
we can
find
go
out
and meet
exactly.
together and find out the best location. I'm not certain the best location's down near the pond, but
I love the idea personally of one near Wheat Beach because there's all those trails to the right side, there's no
Yeah.
signage about what exists.
I never even knew
We've
that
got
existed.
upcoming projects that Wheat Beach, yeah, I think it's a
Yeah.
wonderful idea,
I
especially
understand.
there. Yeah.
Pam, do you have a preferred design? Because, you know, thinking back about the master plan, there's definitely a number of references about improving signage. I mean, that was definitely an objective that we have as a commission to improve signage. I think over time, we need to think about some level of, you know, do we want consistency throughout the parks? Do we want each park to sort of have a unique thing? Or those things that we want to, you know, it's almost like branding, that we really want them to look better. I mean, you look at these, you know, this one here, Cherry Lawn, in the picture looks decent. You know, this one in Celtics looks pretty crummy. So I think it's something we need to think about as we really try to upgrade, the, you know, the look and the feel of all the parks. Do you have a preferred style?
no, there's so many different ones.
But should we be narrowing that down so we don't have so many different ones and we start creating some consistency?
So I'll just speak to the Southwood one, it may look like it's in bad shape here, it's actually in very good shape, it's just
Yeah,
that
it's-
the roof takes a beating from
Right.
Yeah.
the wetness of being in the woods, but actually it's very,
It's
actually in
very
decent shape.
nice, actually,
That's why I think
yeah.
we maybe
I
use it as
inspected
an
it a
example.
lot,
Okay.
yeah.
It doesn't
Do
photograph
do they
very well,
change
but
the
okay.
information in and out of that, or do they
They
leave that?
do, yeah, periodically Crystalna will put update maps or
'Cause that's
bird
important to
signs
us.
and, yes,
And
so
we
they're all
want the
user
other-
friendly,
yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Pam, do the gyms have like a construction standard that they should, that maybe Carson might wanna check in with them on? Like
Oh,
in terms of Jim Flynn or
Jim
Jim
Flynn?
Coughlin, in terms
Yeah,
of, you know,
Share that with, I mean, certainly that, I think
Yeah.
that's more important with Jim Flynn as to location, because he's gonna have to maintain around it, and
Well, I'm just
mowers
thinking-
and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah, I'm
but-
just thinking though, in terms of how it's built, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're gonna maintain it, right? So I would think Jim would wanna weigh in and just say, okay, I've seen Carson's design, I've seen how we're gonna implement this and kinda
Well,
get it in the ground.
We can separately meet with Jim,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
just maybe have
I think that's a
Carson
great
weigh in
idea.
and Jim weigh in.
in terms of pressure treated.
These are like sonotubes that you're doing and with concrete or?
Concrete, yes. I would do a whole fill of concrete placement.
Got it. Okay.
So, in terms of our signs, we have one at Selks, we have one at Woodland Park, we currently have two at Cherry Lawn, and we're.
No, the one behind the nature center is really operated by the nature
Yeah,
center.
yeah.
The one at the garden,
And the garden.
the gardens is operated by the Park and Rec, and the gardens,
I think more the gardens.
or the gardens, yeah.
So that's the, did Parks and Rec pay for the one by the gardens, or do the gardens own that? Okay, so we're thinking about, I'm just thinking in terms of the amount of signage in one park. This would be a third sign, appreciating the fact that
Each one's
Well, the
each
nature
one
center you
has
don't
a
see,
purpose.
you don't see
It's,
that from the.
I
You
didn't
have-
even know, I barely
Right, you have to go
found it.
behind the nature center, you can
Yeah.
see that, so
No,
you don't, the
I
public
know where
doesn't
it
see
is.
that.
I know where it is. So if we had a third one, where would you envision this going?
Again, we don't have use of the community garden one, so.
Oh, I
it's-
thought you said it was Parks and Rec and you use it.
It's, no,
It's only for the gardens?
yeah, we don't use it.
At all?
But see, that's one of my questions, who
Who uses it?
controls all the content? Because one of our agenda items tonight is in fact signage, because again, our rules don't address it.
I do not know. I'm assuming it's just the garden club.
Who
We
built,
haven't had
do
any
you know
access
who
to it.
built it?
I mean, that's way before my time, I do not know.
So maybe we should
I
find
think
that
that's before
out,
my
so we
time,
can
that's-
understand who owns the sign, who keeps it up,
These
who
are all,
changes it.
this is my very long to-do list, Amy.
No, are you in the clerk?
Yeah,
Can you make a call?
basically, the people who are involved in the garden, if they come up with an article that is of interest to the gardeners, it's posted, basically. And it's kind of informal. Dorothy Trevelyan is basically the head of the gardens, and everything kind of moves through her. but it's meant to be helpful to the gardeners, whatever information is posted.
Okay, because if we find out that this is actually Parks and Rec's sign stand, and then we can use it, maybe we can use some of the real estate on that bulletin board. I mean, maybe it's,
Well, it'd be nice to have our own, which would be nice,
You have
because
to go into the park, I mean, it's,
right.
because this is what
so
close to.
if he's
again,
gonna
back to my
build one,
question,
we-
where would we
Well, we
put
would
it?
want to put it in a very active location that most people would see it, so we would have to go down together or walk.
Yeah.
Yep, we'll
Figure
talk.
it out.
Just-
Or near parking.
I think you should give us the
Right.
leeway to position the
Just-
sign in
okay.
Cherry Lawn where we think it's best. We'll get best noticed.
I think up to the parking lot.
But there would be 3 then in Cherry Lawn, is what I'm
Right,
hearing. I
right,
think
right.
Amy, is your concern, is that just
It's a
too
lot of
many?
signs.
It's just a
But
lot
the
of
nature
signs.
center one doesn't
Nature
really
centers,
count.
it doesn't.
It's like,
I know, it's way back,
doesn't.
yeah, but if
You-
we're
you-
trying to be consistent.
And then the
Right.
gardens is sort of,
Is their own
it's,
entity.
even if it belongs to Park and Rec, which I bet it probably does, yeah, it's their thing. So
It's
this
really
would be
their
related to
thing.
the trails of the and
Right.
Cherry Lawn and, you know,
I'm
the
just
rest of
wondering
Cherry Lawn.
if, is there one of any other parks? Like, is there, if he's doing 2 signs, do we need 3 opportunities at Cherry Lawn? Or is there another park where we could actually take advantage of this wonderful gift and put it in a different park that has no signs?
Quite honestly, I
Well,
really like
Cherry
the
Lawn,
idea
I'm
of
sorry,
Cherry Lawn.
that's why the
I
beach,
can't
the
hear
beach
that.
is the most useful.
Yeah.
The beach
And
where
the
the
beach
paths are,
we'd be
makes
just
a ton of sense.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, definitely,
Hands down.
especially with the new project.
Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
right. I think that's
Do we have
the point.
anything at that, near Stony?
Stonebrook?
Yeah.
So there is one.
There is one, isn't there?
Yeah, Miss Valley recommended that one as not a good one, but to check it out for
Yeah.
what not to do.
What not to do, because it's.
Yeah, 'cause it's
Well, so you're
Right.
not getting that
It's-
many visitors there
Apparently,
either.
it was like a project of another Eagle Scout,
Yeah,
and was like the board had some problems with that, and they didn't really like it, and so she was like, just make sure that it's better quality than that, and yeah, basically. So there is one there. It's just not very good quality.
right.
Which goes back to having Jim's weigh in on
Exactly.
kind of the construction of it.
The construction, and again, the 2 at Cherry Lawn, they look reasonably similar. I think we need to drive towards consistency. Again, I think we have to have a standard and a sort of a, you know, we don't want 3 different signs that look and feel completely differently.
And it does
in
look
the
like the
same park.
Selleck sign looks similar to the chip,
This is so much.
Yes.
right, Lori?
I'm
It looks
sorry,
like-
Mike.
It looks like the Selleck sign looks similar to the Cherry Lawn sign,
Yes,
the construction of it.
yes.
And I think there's actually 2 at Sellerswood, but you know, there's one further
There's
down
a
by the
south and
lake.
north entrance.
Right.
The south
And there's a
entrance
third
has
one in the
there.
middle.
Really?
Yeah, there's a third one in the middle by
I didn't know
where
that,
the
actually.
access point, I think I live right next to it, so.
Yeah.
Oh, so they've got 3.
They have 3.
Okay.
So it says 1 at each entry point and 1 in the middle.
They're
Okay.
all pretty nice.
Not
Okay.
So we do not have a full inventory of
Not
this
of
type,
those
this sign,
Yes, type signs.
yes, type
Yeah.
signs, okay, we probably should develop that and have that something that we talk about.
Yeah, and a picture of each one
Yeah, I
And
think
and
it's
who
very smart to do
who
that.
controls the content, et cetera,
Formatting.
et cetera.
Yeah.
Formatting the content, because we drive towards implementing all, you know, different pieces of the master plan, and that definitely was a key thing. Dan Biggs talked about that a lot, about signage and wayfinding and
Yeah.
consistent look and feel, that we should start by inventorying and determining if we wanna have a standard.
And maintenance of them.
Maintenance, all of that.
Well, I feel better about the 3rd sign in Cherry Lawn knowing that there are 3 at least in Sellerswood.
Because I still feel like we shouldn't be saying 3 at Cherry Lawn,
I
because
know.
it's nature center.
Yeah.
It's not
But
Cherry
it's in
Lawn.
Cherry Lawn.
It's behind,
But it's,
But,
yeah.
You don't
Nature
even see
Center
it.
actually, I think,
Leases
leases that
property.
from us,
Yeah.
so that's our.
but it's their sign, it's theirs,
It
they
doesn't have anything
control
to
it, we
do
have
with-
nothing,
Yeah.
we can't use it, it's not in our control whatsoever, so it's really for only nature center,
There,
but, you know,
if it's on our
participants.
property, it's something,
That we
that's an
control.
agreement, we
Yeah.
control.
Yeah, but I
But
think it's
it's
on
by-
their
we
leased
don't
They,
still
they
area.
manage it, but we control it.
We
because
control
it's
it,
ours.
but, yeah.
But I think it's a good point. I don't feel like we need to have too much more signage,
Right.
but technically we don't have something that we manage,
Right,
at Cherry
right,
Lawn.
yeah.
And it's a premier property for the town, so it does kind of make sense to have something there.
But I also think as a visitor, if you're coming into Cherry Lawn, there's not a sign there
That
that says,
it's
welcome to
clear.
Cherry Lawn, this is what, is
Yeah.
here. Because you just, right now, you just have the hidden one that's down, for the nature center.
The book
and
is-
garden, yeah.
Never really
And the
separated
garden,
across
so,
our
I think
dinner
that would be
area.
very helpful to have something that's front and center, probably close to the parking lot.
On the Selleck Sparks one, there's actually a little sign that hangs down. It's like "Welcome to Selleck's Woods," and we could put that on the bulletin board
Okay.
if it was like near the entrance or if it was just in general.
Yeah, just to clarify, your preference is Cherry Lawn?
I would love to be able to do some marketing there.
So your preference is Cherry Lawn?
Wood Beach is great too, both of those sites are very busy. So
So I think we just.
Anywhere we have an opportunity to
I don't wanna-
market
I
some.
just
detours
feel, I feel
down.
badly that when you get out of the car, again, I'm not in favor of a lot of signage, but when you get out of the car at Cherry Lawn, the signage that greets you is about hours for walking your dog, and there's nothing really more than that, so that's why I see this as an opportunity, in like a measured way to read and share information. That's the way I look at it personally.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing we have to think about over time, and I really do feel we need to discuss this, is we have to be careful about having signage that's all the don'ts.
Yes.
This is supposed to be a happy, wonderful place, to come and have a good time, and you see these massive lists of all the things you can't and shouldn't do, and it's kind of a turnoff. We do have to communicate our rules.
There's
But I
some
think
clever ways.
I think that's things we really need to work on and really have really tight control about. And I just remember a few years ago when the fireworks came back and the police did those robocalls and they were, don't do this, don't do that, you can't stay. By the time you get there, she's like, how do you wanna go? Because
It's a turn on.
it was a turnoff. So I think we need to really be conscious of it, and I think it's something that we should really actively be working on and thinking about is how we approach signage, which is why I have it.
It's an opportunity instead.
Can I ask one question, because it's relevant to this? I believe there's only one sign at Woodland, and that's a huge park, and they do have it, from the entrance on Middlesex, but there's nothing from the entrance on the other end, and there's so many trails throughout there that just might be an interesting place to do it along with Weed, because those are kind of the two trail areas. At some point, I would love to see the trails at Cherry Lawn in the back more developed. They had been at one point and they're run down, and I'm hoping an Eagle Scout that wants to take that on someday. But just to throw that out, I mean, Woodland is huge and has all the trails, and to me, that's the thing, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily thinking that's just trails, I'm talking about our programs and our things that are happening that we can interchange in and out. So that could be another potential
More
Eagle Scout.
traffic
Yeah.
going to Cherry Lawn.
Okay.
At them all the time.
I just
Yeah,
feel
more
like-
traffic going to Cherry Lawn,
It's a lot of,
But I mean, certainly another
yeah.
possible Eagle Scout project
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah, then I would just request, as Lori said, there's a lot of no, you can't signs at Cherry Lawn right now. And so if there was a way to incorporate, I know this is an information board, but if we're gonna do this, if we can really be thoughtful about taking down so many of the other miscellaneous signs and then have that somewhere strategically placed where it also doesn't just block the view when you walk in. Thank you.
Sure.
Any more questions?
Nice proposal, Carson.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
So if someone can make a motion to accept Preston Baxter's proposal to,
So what are we leaning towards? Do we want to kind of explicitly indicate a particular park?
I think so.
Okay, so which park are you, just so I know, I'm happy to make a motion, I just
I
share
think
with
it was one at Weed and one at Cherry.
Yes.
His proposal, he's offering two.
Got it, okay. So I'd like to, I move that we accept Carson's proposal to build two signs, one at Weed and one at Cherry Lawn, based upon his proposal.
And a second.
Okay. I think we should also specify that he will be working, and under the direction of the Parks and Recreation Department.
Absolutely.
You know, to make
So-
sure that,
So the
So you
the
and I
motion
will
should,
schedule a
yeah, so the
meeting.
motion should include that, right?
yes, to make sure that appropriate standards are maintained.
Yes. Yeah.
Consistency. And what, well, I'm sorry, and what would your timing be?
Oh, so I actually have this. I'm blanking right now. So yes, all right. So for the rest of August and September, we will acquire the materials, and then November and October we will work on weekends to finish it.
Okay, so,
Yes,
Before the frost.
before it frosts over. Yes.
Let's try to meet next week, Carson. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get Jim Klein on board too.
Thanks,
So
Carl.
we have to
Thank
vote on
you.
it, right?
yes,
Yeah,
and we have a
Sorry
motion on
about
the
the
table,
tardiness.
seconded, vote, all in favor?
This was
Thank
really
you.
well researched. It was really helpful in our discussion that you went around and looked and were able to show this to us, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, good pictures. Yeah, very good.
By the way, one thing I'd love to see at some point, and I think it would be a great scout project, is to get someone, one of your colleagues to sign up to do a refurbishment of the existing signs. Which would be,
Yeah.
I think
Well, I
that'd be a nice
suggested
project.
that too, because
Or
Baker
the
has.
trails
Yeah.
near at the back of Trail, because
Yeah.
they'll run down.
Yeah,
And, yeah.
but even things like replacing the cedar shakes that are kind of, mossed over and stuff like that would be great. But thanks a lot.
Yeah,
That's
it's
great.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Carson.
you.
Okay, thank you, sorry you went to the wrong place.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, actually, we're gonna talk more about signs, because all this got me thinking about signs, and again, as you know, I've been very busy reviewing and rereading the rules, the ordinances, all sorts of things, and as I get into it and really discover, but one of the things that's got me thinking about, and you also know that we did have a presentation by the Friends of Sellett's Woods, and that we want to continue to get the Friends groups in here because it's not clear what their authorities are, et cetera. So all of these pieces really are coming together in terms of how I believe that we need to improve the governance structure that we have in place. But because the signage came up, I got thinking about it, and going through the rules, there is no reference to signage at all. So, which seems to be like a pretty big gap. So I would like to propose that we, update our rules to take action on signage. Pam and I have discussed it. She did some research, got information from Westport, et cetera, and looked around, and some of her colleagues, which, others do definitely have regulations on signage. And I was just crafted up something very simply. It would really be that no person shall place any temporary or permanent sign on park property without prior written approval of the Park and Rec Director or as documented in Parks and Recreation Commission minutes. And I think, we do have to, and I think it can be either or, but I want to talk about it because we could, on one hand, grant Pam the authority to do it. On the other hand, these proposals, for instance, from the Boy Scouts, or, we would want, I think we have to really tighten things up with the Garden Club or whatever to really understand what you're putting up, when you're putting it up. I mean, we wouldn't want the Garden Club to all of a sudden say, now we want a 5 by 7 foot sign or whatever. We definitely need control around this. So that I think might be more a commission thing. So I didn't know whether we wanted a commission decision or to grant Pam the authority.
So just speaking historically, from my experience, in terms of people wanting to put up signs, the only instance I can think of in the last sort of 5-7 years was the Nature Center wanted to put up a sign, and they came to us and presented to us what they wanted to put up.
Yeah.
And the Garden Club has done a project at Cherry Lawn and a project at Weed Beach, but neither time did they put any signage up, maybe a small plaque, like a placard, but like that was in the plants. But I just, before we get into something that is more documentation than perhaps we need, and maybe we do need it, but
Yeah.
before we do, I just historically reflect on the fact that I don't think it happens that often.
But I think you're talking more as well as permanent signs. Nature Center was redoing their signs.
A permanent sign.
They had to have referral for us to go to P&Z as well. So this is also permanent and temporary So for
Okay,
those that
go for
wanna be
those.
advertising inside our
Okay,
parks
alright, that
too,
makes
right?
sense.
So-
Sure,
Bag
yeah, yeah,
sale this
okay, great,
weekend,
that's very helpful,
if
thank
wanna
you.
be
Okay, yep,
anything.
great. Thank you.
But we could do this now, we could do it with the rules rewrite, but I just thought I would, because we were talking about
Sure.
signs tonight and the fact that, you know, again, when I went back to the, it's completely silent. People want to act
What
on.
would you like to do?
We can either consider acting on this evening to, you know, to revise the rules, and then it would be effective within 30 days in the town code, or we could wait and do it when we do the rules rewrite.
Can we ask Pam to go back and draft a rewrite of the rules and come back at our next meeting and present that for a vote?
The whole rewrite, that's.
No, as it pertains to signage.
I was just suggesting we
So you have
amend,
it there,
yeah.
so that was, can you just reread that then, please?
no person shall place any temporary permanent sign on park property without prior written approval of the Parks and Rec director or as documented in Parks and Recreation Commission minutes. So,
That works for me.
Sounds reasonable.
it would fit, hold on, I gotta get the right page. Section 42, R24 is, park property. A is, section on defacing property. B is on climbing trees. C is on picking flowers, and I thought this could be D. It seemed to be the best place in the rules that it would fit. And you may not pick flowers. So we could do that, and then we would have to update it, and it would be effective in 30 days.
Oh, yeah, it's actually great.
So, would you like to offer that motion?
I guess I can offer a motion. I never usually do, but I will. Okay, so. I'll
For
make the
expediency?
motion. I'll make the motion. Second? Sarah? Mike, I don't, that first. Okay, all those in favor?
Odds or evens?
Okay, good. So we have to update that, and that will be effective 30 days from today. Okay. Oh, yeah. You don't have to stay.
You're free to leave if you want,
You're
or you're welcome to stay.
You're welcome to stay.
Yeah, you don't need to stay.
I'm sorry, I didn't even realize he'd gone back and sat down. I'm sorry.
Bye, thanks again, guys.
Okay, all right, so this is your question? Yes.
No, I just didn't know if I could take it, if
You
not,
can
I can
take
go
it,
back
yeah,
and
the
listen. I
bottom
just
part
didn't
was
get
just
it
a note
up
to myself, because I wanted to make the example of the friends groups or whatever, that,
Yes,
because we have to get another friends group on the schedule.
Thank you.
So that's total aside. We did that, I'm trying to do that. Okay, let's go. Discussion taken, okay, so we're gonna continue our discussion this evening on some of the, points regarding the pear tree improvement project. And Mike, I'm gonna let you do this conversation.
Well, so just to, we're all aware, we had our joint meeting back in the middle of July. The objective of that meeting, of course, was to kind of just get some closure, get some decisions made on a number of items that were impeding forward progress for our architect. Which we did, with the exception of a few items that I think was an agreement that we would leave for further deliberation, given that we were kind of going late into the evening. And so this is a list that reflects those additional items that Pam has shared with us. And with that, I think I would prefer to just kind of turn it back over to you, Lori, and then kind of kick off the deliberation and see where we end up.
Just trying to find a proposed, this one is. Oh, it's attached to here, duh, okay, sorry. Okay, sorry. I didn't realize there was a- Okay, so, might suggest we change the order, because I think two of these really goes together, and it's really the heated or not heated and year-round or seasonal, because if it's year-round, obviously, it's gonna be heated. So to some extent, they really do go together. Pam asked Jim Flynn to provide input on this as our parks maintenance supervisor, and you all should have received a copy of the memo that he supplied to us. I think it's here in your packet. But he definitely recommends from a maintenance standpoint that it's important, he feels, to have a heated year-round facility to make it better to maintain. He specifically cited some of the challenges that they've had winterizing Weed Beach, and with the lack of heat, et cetera, that they have had broken pipes, which are very hard to get to. We've definitely seen some rusting that's been pointed out to us, et cetera. So his feeling from a maintenance standpoint in the beach environment, that to be enclosed with heat and keep it effectively open year-round. He cites the fact that just having, doors and windows open from time to time and letting fresh air in, et cetera, helps to maintain the better than something that's just completely sealed and closed up. So I did want to point that out to him. Sure, all of you read that. So it's really the first thing we really need to talk about. So, Weed Beach, as you know, is seasonal. It gets shut down, the bathrooms get shut down, et cetera, as opposed to having a room that would be available and heated and accessible year-round. So I'd really like it open to the floor for discussion and get different people's thoughts on that. We've had some time to think about it.
Lori, would it be helpful maybe to just kind of join this discussion or kind of set some context with what Pam has drafted as kind of the use, the definition of use of the facility?
We could do that. We can do this any way you'd like.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that just set some context for the kind of the discussion.
Absolutely. Well, also in the packet, Pam had drafted, should we say proposed use and rental park, and I marked it up a lot, and the backdrop of this is, as we've been talking about the flexible community space, there's been a lot of questions about how that would be, when it would be used, what control would be had over it to just to maintain the character of the neighborhood, make sure that there's not wild parties going on at 11, 12 o'clock at night, and et cetera, and how we would control it. And what Pam drafted up here, she really launched off of the rental and use policies that we use for the paddle hut, and with the idea that it would be very controlled. So, I don't know that at this juncture we want to go into the very specifics and say, yep, these are the absolute rules. I think this would be something.
This was the newest one.
Okay, but I think this would be something more we would take a sense of the meeting on, that this is the direction we would go, and that we wouldn't really button down the rules until the building was done. But, to give context to our audience members, it talks about that, really it wouldn't be available for rent during the summer season to private parties. It's sort of a concept that's really there, that the room would be open for certain hours for the public to go in and utilize, and then at a certain hour of the day, it gets locked down and then it's closed.
Lori, apologize for cutting, but I think it may be just helpful for Pam to read through. It may take a moment, but I think it would be just helpful because it's such an important kind of centerpiece of the conversation.
That's right.
So Pam, if you would help us, and recognizing we've got some folks here that are specifically here to hear about this.
Yes, but I think the context is, I don't know that we should necessarily say, these are the rules that we're deciding.
It's an initial draft.
This would be an initial draft sense of the meeting, that this is how we would intend to.
But this is kind of a reflection of the thinking, I think, of the director.
The thinking and how
right?
So I think what to best describe this would be that instead of seeing it as two separate rooms, that the concession was designed to be upstairs, right, on that deck. And so, interestingly enough, when you think about the hours, if you were going up to use the concession stand and you wanted to order a hot dog, then you can go inside the flexible space where the concession would be. And you would either choose to stay inside because you're getting out of the sun, or you just choose to plug in your laptop and get the views, or you decide to go outside on the deck. So with that, it would follow the same hours as the concession would be. So whatever those hours may be, what the commission sets, would be the opening and the closing of the flexible community space. And therefore, at the end of the summer, when the concession is closed down, that space is no longer for concession, but then it is open off-season for whatever we choose to use it for.
It's available.
It's available off-season, yes. It could be meetings, it could be programming, it could be for a party, it
So
could have
it's,
numerous different.
it seems to me that's dependent therefore on whether we're interested in having concession or not.
But we did put in the letter from P and Z that states there's a town ordinance against the food trucks being able to stay one
No,
night.
I understand that.
So that was really where the commission was trying to say whether they wanted that type of thing or a concession.
You know, they're only allowed to stand for 5 minutes or something.
Right.
So, but that's the first thing, is
Right.
concession or no concession, so that's a decision that needs to be made. And if you decide no concession, then that will.
There's just no food.
There's no, right. So, I personally think it's really nice to have concession there. But I do think that, just from what I've spoken to people, that they really do want set hours, because they come to get their hot dog and nobody's there.
Right.
And they have bunny food.
I think that will change.
So that's been frustrating.
Yeah, I think that will change.
I don't know how everybody else feels about concession.
I support concession.
Absolutely.
I think a concession makes sense. Definitely.
We sort of switched over to the concession, but while we're talking about it.
Well, I think it's a.
No, it all, you're right, it all
Right,
ties
right.
together, but I did, I did some, looking around, different websites, whatever, found information on Connecticut beaches, different lists that were considered the best beaches in Connecticut. Pear Tree was actually on there, amazingly so. And Weed was not, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But with, of the top 15, I think.
By the way, that was for water quality, I thought.
Doesn't
No, this was a different one, this was amenities and different
Oh,
things.
is that right?
Yes. But there were, only, of this group of 15, there were on, I broke them down, but I will not, but there were only 2 or 3 that did not have concessions. I mean, I really looked through all the different amenities, and it was pretty consistent. I think it may be a regional thing, Tiara's not able to be here tonight, but, she sent me a note saying, well, I come from California, and concessions on the beach just isn't a thing in California. So I think it's regional, but it appears, at least here in Connecticut, that it is a thing. So, just for whatever that's worth, based on my internet research, internet research.
Larry, are we gonna vote on each individual one of these like we did at the last meeting?
I think we could.
Okay.
I think we could. I think Amy's absolutely correct. They all kind of link together.
Okay.
They all kind of link.
Right, no,
together.
I agree, but.
So if we circle back then tying it into the room and the rules, but it's really rental space, the concept would be off-season. So during the season it would be available to the public, and then off-season, the room could be rented out, but that it would be tightly controlled.
Right, so it wouldn't be open.
Right.
As like, for instance, during the summer, the room is available to beachgoers.
Right.
As an indoor spot to get out of the sun, to have something to eat, and it's open
Pam,
concession
I
hours.
really think it would be helpful, I know it's gonna take a couple of minutes, I really think it would be helpful at some point this evening that you read through this for the benefit
Okay.
of the commission certainly.
Do you want me to do that now?
Well, once again, we have a little bit of a kind of what goes first here, but, I think you continue to refer back to the kind of off-season use, and I think you've kind of taken a crack at defining some ground rules for
Yeah.
off-season use.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be helpful to
Okay, let's
kind of
start
get that
with,
out
let's
there.
just start with, from the top, types of groups in order of priority.
Why don't you start from the top?
Okay, the primary purpose of the Pear Tree Community Space is to give residents an enhanced waterfront space to congregate with family, friends, and neighbors, to enjoy the beautiful harbor in an enclosed space, get out from the hot sun, rain, and any parks and recreation programs and activities. Following these priorities, the building may be rented by the following groups. Type of groups in order of priority: parks and recreation programs and activities, Darien civic and / nonprofit groups, and Darien general public. 2 seasons of rental permitted. June, July, and August will only be for beach users and not rentable during these busy months. And I didn't put August in there, but that's what was intended. Fall, winter rentals, September through March. Spring rentals, April through May. And summer rentals, again, no rentals available June through August.
Can I make
Sure.
a remark there? Only because I have rented the Weed Beach paddle hut in June.
Right.
It was before school was out, it was like a graduation thing, you know, the beaches weren't really used, I mean, I just didn't know if there's any flexibility if it's a special evening time event.
Well, I think the premise, in my opinion, was to say, let's put something together. Certainly the commission can change any of these things, this is just a draft. But I thought, let's get through the summer, get through the year, assess it.
Kind of figure out.
This way, we're making sure that we're not creating an out of control type of thing. The summer's very busy. Let's take a look at it, let's start slowly. And if we find out that the summer.
That's fair. Yep,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Hours of use and rental, no more than 2 rentals of the facility will be permitted per day unless approval by Parks and Recreation Director. Fall, winter, Monday through Friday, 4 to 9 p.m. Saturday, 11 to 10 p.m. Sunday, 12 to 10 p.m. Spring, Monday through Friday, 4 to 9 p.m. Saturday, 6 to 10, Sunday, 6 to 10. Summer, flexible space will be open to beachgoers the same time as concession stand hours are determined. An attendant must be on duty to open and close. Groups must provide general cleanup. And I did just put a star in their latest thoughts is to have flexible space be the indoor space to obtain concessionaire food. Or you take your concession food to the outdoor deck. This way the doors to flexible space would be opened and closed by concessionaire, and when concession stand closes for the season, the space would then be available for rental hours. The current hours at Wade Beach concession is 11 to 7 p.m. Rentals will be approved based on the policies and practices of the Park and Recreation Department and can be denied by the sole discretion of the director. Darien residents cannot book a rental for a non-Darien resident or agency. Facility rental permits are available to those 21 years of age or older. Reservations, facility rental permits are available by advance reservation only. A minimum of 2 weeks in advance for approval is required. Setup and cleanup time must be included in requests. Fees, facility rental fees will apply. These will include utility charges, cleaning, attendant, and security deposits. Rate schedule is set by the Parks and Recreation Commission. Payment is required in advance at the time of reservation. Cancellation fees will apply. And then we have insurance. Basically, renters must sign the Parks and Recreation waiver and a certificate of public liability coverage for personal injury and property damages in court during the time for which the application is made. There's a number 5 for cancellations, date or time changes of activity event must be received Monday through Friday at a minimum of 2 weeks in advance of the event. Failure to do so will result in application of the full fee for rental. There's an inclement weather policy. There's an alcohol policy, there's smoking, which is smoking ban is in effect in all Darien parks currently. The building with general cleanup and breakdown is the responsibility of the person listed on the permit. Everything must be completed by 9 p.m. Groups must bag and remove refuse to dumpster, and this is all the same, basically the same rules and regulations that apply to the paddle today. Furniture, the department may or may not have furniture for use inside the building. Groups must rent, provide their own if facilities are insufficient. And then nothing must be removed from the building. Building structure, no tape of any kind may be used on the walls or painted surfaces of the building. Use of nails or screws is not permitted. And of course, maximum capacity will be determined when the size of flexible space is decided upon. And fee schedule is set annually by the Park and Recreation Commission.
So a lot of this just came directly from the rules associated with the beach.
So we'll just replicate. Absolutely. And to Lori's point, is that, you know, this is a draft, and this can really be tightened up.
Yeah, with the hours, once we
Yeah.
review hours.
But this, what I'd like to have is more what's known as a sense of, so we wouldn't vote on this document because it needs some cleanup and some work, but a sense of the meeting that this is the concept, that the use of the building is controlled, when it's rented, there is an attendant on premises during the party, exactly like when you rent the paddle hop, there's a guy that's there, like, you know,
Opens and closes.
oh, but it's,
Yeah.
they're there, they're there, it's not just the guy.
The supervision.
There's supervision, that they open it up, they lock up, control it, then the park closes for the night, it gets locked, so it's not just people can go and just sort of willy-nilly set up, and then there's capacity limitations, so they're very controlled, to make sure.
And our
everything's
facility
like
at
that.
Paddle Hut is, as you know, Lucy rented it, it's controlled. It's-
Oh, yeah.
But he's there,
People love it.
yeah, but he's there the whole time. I mean,
He's great, he was in the office, Ron helped him.
Yeah, but they're the open, but it would be the same concept, that there would be somebody that's there, it's not the, well, it wouldn't, well, actually, there isn't a gate guard off-season, for when it's rented, the gate guard would be gone, so the people renting it, so I mean, there's financial commitment here, they've gotta, you know, cover the cost for the guard, and clean, and all of that, so. And then, you know, I think as we get into it, we're really looking, you know, capacity issues, and then, of course, you know, hours and such, I mean, 10 on a Sunday might be late, so we have to look at that.
So are we voting on each of these things, or are we just talking about these things? I mean, I know we didn't get to them in the last
I
meeting.
think we need to vote on them, as again,
On
as I
each
said,
one, or just
we
all
can
four
group
as a
them,
concept?
we can group them, as I said, I don't wanna vote specifically on this document, that I think should be a sense of the meeting,
No, I
that that's
meant
the
these
direction we wanna go,
four.
but yes,
These
these
four
four,
things.
were the first three released, the concession, no concession, heated or not, and year-round or season, which all go together, I think sounds like we could probably go as one. The use and hours of the flexible communities who draft outline, I think that would be a sense of the meeting vote, but that's the direction we intend to go, to just really make clear to the public that our intention is not to build a year-round building that sits there unlocked from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, that anybody can just go in and use for any purpose at any time. I think that's really the distinction that we're trying to make it agree upon, hopefully, at this time. And then, the size,
Which was put in the
okay, I think that's true.
Right, the three sizes basically you see is that when we shocked the world by saying 2,000 square feet, we certainly had come back to that and said, Paddle Hut space is 900 square feet. And as, if you've rented it, you know it's not a very large space. So, in my opinion, to go down to 450 square feet is tiny. So, I think,
That would be.
personally, I think the Paddle Hut is, it's 900 square feet can give you a nice area. I mean, it's still not overwhelming, and it's not, I think it's doable.
The paddles, 900.
970 square feet. So how do you wanna do this, Lori? You wanna,
Why don't we, as I said, we're going to go to,
I would say those top three, certainly, the second and third are really one.
Right, they really are,
Right.
right.
Exactly.
And that is predicated on determining whether you have the first item, otherwise.
Right.
And then we can get to the size.
Well, do you want to just do the sense of the meeting on the use and hours of the flexible sites, which is
Sure.
really, a sense of the meeting that the draft document, which is, referred to as Pear Tree Flexible Community Space Use and Rental Policy, to really get a sense of the meeting that this is the direction that we intend to go. That it is a facility that it is controlled, that there's established rules for use, et cetera, so that it is really clear to the community, what's intended here, and that it's really the Park and Recreation Commission's intention to make sure that the use of it is maintained and well controlled, and not burdensome to the neighborhood. think is really what we're trying to accomplish with
The
this.
the one maybe clarification, if I can use the word clarification that I'd make here is, yes, it's, the framework is based upon the paddle hut,
Yeah.
but Pear Tree is not Wheat Beach. And I think we need to be mindful and sensitive to the fact that Pear Tree is adjacent to residences, kind of more closely adjacent to residences in a way that Wheat isn't. I mean, the paddle hut is a little bit further away from anybody's house than this facility would be. And, you know, the beach itself and the park itself is a smaller setting as well. So I think
And
we're
that's,
attempting to kind of capture that also in kind of the framework and controls that we're established. I think that's the contention, right?
and I think that's really important, Mike, because people are seeing this for the first time tonight. We haven't had the opportunity to have any public reaction to it, so I think it would be very premature to say we're locking this in. This is more a directional assessment that we will get more input on, so.
Yeah,
I think it really
but my sense, kind of an overriding aspect of this is that this is also kind of designed around the recognition that it's a different beach than,
Yes.
even though we're kind of referencing the rules that was set for paddle hut, we're kind of working off of that, but we're not seeing this as the same situation as the paddle hut. Oh, you're not really, right? So,
Correct.
more importantly.
So, is that comfortable for people in terms of the first one? So, if we could take a sense of the
Yeah.
meeting vote, I don't think we need an official.
No, that's not, I mean, once again, the objective here, just to clarify, is, you know, we've got an architect, and he's gotta move forward, you know, and he's on a fixed price, and, you know, and he's got work that we're asking him to accomplish, and so there's a set of these items here that he can't proceed with until we get direction from the commission on. Not this item particularly, but the rest of the items,
Okay,
so, yeah.
all right, so if I could get a sense of the meeting on, This
I
concept?
think it's a good start.
okay, everybody, in favor?
Can I ask a question?
Not really.
Okay.
We have public comment section.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's directionally a good
Yeah.
one. I mean, I definitely wanna see more details once we
Yeah.
get there, but I think we need to have a concession stand there. And that feeds into everything.
And, you know, and, you know, just kind of for some further context, you know, Pam has been asked now since, at least for the last number of months, to come back and present kind of this framework that she just read through back to the committee. So it is an important kind of milestone for us to get that initial framework out there, just for the benefit of all involved. So, you know, it's hard to build something if you don't know what the kind of the use case is.
So if I could get a sense of the meeting, those in favor of the general direction of establishing,
Based upon what Pam has just read through,
Yes.
not the other items yet.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Specifically, yes, I said specifically to the draft of the community space use and rental policy, which is a conceptual draft at this point. So, those who are in support?
Yeah,
Okay.
no
Any
objections
opposed?
here, I think it's a good start.
Okay, but we need to document that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we can go back to, if we wanna talk about, I mean, do we wanna pull together both the concession and year-round heated? I mean, if it's year-round, it's by definition heated.
You can talk about the first one first, on its own.
The concession?
really. Yeah, because theoretically, you can have a concession that obviously isn't
That's true.
used in the off-season, right? So,
So, any discussion from any commission members about the commission,
I did hear Sarah say, although Sarah's left, so we don't have Sarah's vote here, but Sarah said she was in support of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm certainly in support of it.
I am in support.
Absolutely.
Likewise, it makes infinitely more sense than having trucks wandering around, whatever.
Which we now
Provides
found
a
out
service
we
for the
can't have.
community, you know,
Yeah.
I've been there like quite a lot through the summer during the day when day camps are coming in, and I've seen how excited kids are, you know, to go up to the concession stand and buy something, and I've seen how disappointed they are when they get there and the concession stand is closed. So, that's just one constituency, but I think it's, you know, one of a number of constituents. And I certainly like getting my chocolate eclair there on Saturday.
I have one because you
Yeah, that's really great.
So are people ready to, any more discussion on the concession? Okay. So all of those in favor of moving forward to incorporating a concession stand into the project? Okay, any opposed? Okay, so now we go to, I think these two go together, heated and,
Yep.
heated and year round.
I mean, theoretically, you could have it heated in response to Jim Flynn's kind of point that he's making, which is his, I think Jim's kind of point of having it heated is more from a maintenance perspective. And a wear and tear on it, so you don't have these dramatic changes in temperature and things expanding and contracting. I think Jim's also point is like, they do a lot of work. It frees them up to do interior work in the off-season when they're working kind of in the exterior, doing all of what they're doing elsewhere. So if it's cold in the interior, it kind of closes that down. So I guess theoretically you could have it, but just to make that point.
And also if we know we've talked about reintroducing the concept of having the elevator to limit the rate. I
Yes.
would think with an elevator,
Yes.
the mechanics probably wouldn't want that exposed.
Right, or you just, you'd have the elevator shut down and you have to kind of do a start of season maintenance kind of protocol with it, I guess, yeah.
Amy, Erica?
No, I mean, I think it makes sense from a mechanical, building perspective. He's the expert, and if he says that makes the most sense, there's kind of no question about that. He's certainly speaking from experience. So that gives us a lot of, framework to lean on. And then it kind of leads us to the natural year-round extension that we'd be silly not to take advantage of.
I agree with Erica's observation.
Mary Louise or Lucy?
I agree, I think it would be, having that extra facility there would be a real plus for the community and, be lovely.
Yeah, I completely support spaces where families can go and children and whatnot, so, I really support it. I really like what's been happening with Reed Beach, so I'm completely supportive of utilizing another beach that has more access to the town versus just the community that lives around it.
So are we ready for a vote on that? And so that would be, that the commission would be asking the Pear Tree Building Committee to work with our professionals to design a year-round heated facility.
Yes.
All those in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, good. And that leaves us with the size discussion.
So maybe I'll kind of weigh in here. So if you flip through, Pam kind enough to include in this packet a page from one of Neil Houck's presentations to us. And just the background on this, as we were kind of starting down the road of trying to figure out the size, we had our first meeting. We had requested of Pam to share her initial thoughts on size. And so Pam got back to Neil with a size that was essentially twice the size of the paddle hut at Weed Beach. So the Weed Beach paddle hut is about 975 square feet. I think your initial cut was roughly 2,000 square feet or just thereabouts. And Neil came back to us with a schematic, kind of presented that to the committee. And that was our first kind of glimpse of, okay, what might this kind of mean in terms of kind of footprint and massing and I came away from that meeting, and then Randy and I had a chance to chat about it. I came away from that meeting not with a specific number in mind, but kind of recognizing, okay, so it's a little bit of a challenge. How do we get to the right number? So we had an offline conversation with Randy, Neil, and I. And in that conversation, essentially what we asked Neil to help us to understand is, okay, talk to us a little bit about, like, in terms of the context of what we're doing here, what might be the bare minimum size of a kind of a flexible community space below which it's kind of just not worth doing and it's completely unusable? And then help us to understand what that might look like from that number up in some increments, not knowing what those increments might be. So help us understand it from the perspective of occupancy, how many people can you fit in it, if our use is on a normal basis, having folks just get up there and kind of sit in there and maybe get out of the sun or have a cup of coffee, or it could be for meetings, it could be for any range of things that, Pam will ultimately kind of come to an understanding of for us. So that was one. Also, another kind of element was when we kind of had the conversation was, okay, just also help us understand like furniture configurations, because it was like just the number is just purely too abstract. It's really, for me, it's almost impossible just to understand, like peg a number and say that's the number for me. I want to understand how many people can get in there, and I think the committee was helped by going through that exercise a bit as well. So what Neil, once Neil understood what we were kind of asking him, he came back and said, okay, here's a few projects that I've done, and here are the size of those projects in terms of square footage. Here's the use of those particular projects. He pointed to a series of projects in Darien. One was the Darien Historical Society, kind of the library meeting space in Darien Historical Society. I had just recently been there myself, so I had kind of a first-hand view of that. He pointed to kind of a space at the Darien Community Association as well, with a large kind of meeting room in the Darien Community Association. And then we know what the paddle hut looked like, and that seemed to be kind of, there was another, but we had kind of a sense now. And he was able to tell us, okay, for this square footage, you can get this many people in there, and you kind of get these different kind of types of configurations of furniture in there. So that was kind of, that helped. Neil then took that and brought that back to the committee, shared that with us. We went through kind of the exercise a little bit. So that's what's here in front of you is essentially the schematic configurations that reflect those three spaces. One is the paddle hut, another is the historical society, and the third is kind of a suggestion for the flexible community space in Pear Tree based upon a footprint that's roughly the size, in fact a little bit bigger than the Darien Historical Society. So why is only the Darien Historical Society here and not like three other spaces that might be bigger? You may be asking yourself that question. It certainly seemed to me that, again, what's kind of unique about Pear Tree and what we've been hearing about it is that it's a more intimate space, it's a smaller footprint, just in terms of the square footage of the space, it's not weed, and so you can almost think about, essentially, you kind of throw in a dart on the board here, and somebody else might have kind of suggested kind of leading with some other configuration. This, from my perspective, in terms of the square footage of roughly the size that Neil has here, under 500 square feet, now I'm putting my commission hat on now. I'm taking my committee hat off, I'm putting my commission hat on now. I'm going to weigh in terms of what I think as a kind of a member of the commission here, just as you guys are. I think that is a space that achieves many, if not all, of the objectives. In my mind, I think are kind of relevant for that space. It's as an enclosed space, that space can fit roughly 30 people. So if we were to have an event in the off-season in that space, I know people generally have, you guys probably have parties with many, many more people than 30 people, but I think it could be a nice party. It could be a nice size for a small, intimate party. It could be a nice size space if one of our community groups chose to have their meeting there. It could be a nice size space if we chose to have our meeting there. It also lends itself nicely to kind of this flexible kind of living room type lounge-like seating, as well as, it could be easily reconfigured for kind of conference type seating. As I said, I had recently been at the Darien Historical Society. I was in that space when I was collecting all my postcards that I shared with everybody, kind of like the historical trajectory of what the beach looked like. And when Neil mentioned it, I was thinking, gee, I actually really liked that. Now this is purely personal now, of course I recognize that, but I thought that space was a great space. It could kind of accommodate a fair number of people. I completely recognize why Pam, as the director, might want to have more space there, because I understand that Pam can envision doing more with a bigger space. I think the flip side of that equation is I think we have to be mindful that as to what size that beach can accommodate.
Can I interject, because you're telling what I'm thinking, but
fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, That's somewhat fair, but my feeling is that I think that the space is gonna be so beautiful that I think that there's going to be people that are really gonna wanna use it. So it's not necessarily about what I want to do
Oh, there's
with
no
the town.
disagreement. I completely agree.
I feel as if it's a beautiful location. There's 200 parking spaces. I think it can accommodate, I would hate for it to say 30 people, somebody say, my God, that's, with tables and chairs, it really is only comfortable for 15. And so
No, I'm
I
sorry,
think,
what was the 15?
no, I said, I think that with tables and chairs, it could maybe even cut down on that number.
No, that's a number with furniture in
And
various configurations.
when you look at the 900, which you said 975, it says 912 here.
I think it's 975 actually.
But when you have to think about the concession being part of that space now, even with that 912 as it says here.
No, the concession would not be part of that space. This is just the
Isn't it
flexible community
separate?
space.
Yeah, it's
Right,
separate.
but this is what I think should be proposed, is that it's not two separate spaces, because as we talked about with the rules and regs, when you come in, that room should be the same. So when
Oh,
you
no.
when you're coming in and you're walking into the concession, you will be either in an inside space and stay to have your hot dog, or you're gonna take your hot dog and go outside on the deck. So
No,
to
hold-
incorporate
hold-
that.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Basically, the design we're looking at the moment, which is once again just a schematic and it's a rough massing, has two structures. Neil refers to them as two pavilions or two pods with a space in between. One is the flexible community space that would roughly be this size. There's a space, which is kind of a little portico in between. And then there's a separate concession, which we have to decide whether we want or not. There's a separate concession facility. So it's not as though this 475 is being shared with a concession facility. You're right, that would be like a phone booth then.
Right,
So
what
we're
I'm
not-
saying is that when we put the rules and regs together,
Mhm.
and I highlighted in blue, was that to rethink how we would control this space. And we would control it by being allowed, the beachgoers would be allowed to use this space during the summer to let beachgoers use it. So it's not a free-for-all, so it wouldn't be a separate space.
I'm not following what you're saying, I'm sorry.
Yep,
I'm
so,
following that, but I'm not sure I understand how that translates.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Because
how
the
it
concession
relates.
has to, you have to be able to
No,
close
hold
that
on,
concession
hold
off,
on.
right? That has to be
If
separate.
we're asking the concessionaire to kind of lock up and when they go home at night, they have two locks they have to lock.
Mhm.
They have the concession stand lock and they have
but
the
it would be
flexible community
most
space.
controlled if that, people entered that space, and on the back side of that space was actually, say it's a rolled window that opens up and the concession's open into that space.
Well, now
And
you're
when
kind
it
of,
closes, I know,
you're kind of redesigning what we've been looking at now for the last,
I think
Two
that
months.
makes most sense of the space itself.
well, respectfully, I
In
would have to
terms-
disagree with you on that,
Okay.
you know?
Okay, I think.
And that's not what we're really talking about. I think what we're talking about is size here, right?
Mhm.
And I think you've kind of made a kind of a suggestion or
Mhm,
proposal for initially 2,000 square feet.
Mhm.
And then, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but something in the area of about 900 square
Mhm.
feet a few moments ago.
Yeah,
And so, with my commission hat on now, and I'll have to flip back and forth a couple of times here if I have to clarify, but with my commission hat on, I'm suggesting that I think what would be most appropriate for that space would be a footprint certainly smaller than the Wheat Beach Paddle Hut. I don't see the need for it. If we do have folks who, you know, with a larger group that might want to do something at one of our beaches, they could go to the Paddle Hut. So we're kind of activating a space that doesn't exist today at a place where, to your point, I think it really would be beautiful. But I accept that argument that, you know, it's going to be so beautiful, why shouldn't we make it bigger? And by that argument, why shouldn't we make it 5,000 square feet and cover the entire beach? So I think, you know, this is the tricky part, you know, for me, you know, it would be nice to have it bigger, but I think being sensitive to the space, the nature of the space, with my commission hat on, I'm suggesting this smaller space, but I'm just one person's opinion here now. And it's not the co-chair of the committee's opinion, it's a member of the commission's opinion. So I think the commission has to decide, back to Pam's point, correct me if I'm wrong here, based upon usage and programming that we're kind of licensing the director to proceed with, what's an appropriate size for that space.
So, I guess I'll dive in here. So I was initially kind of surprised, I know everybody's
Someone's gonna start.
I was initially surprised by the 2,000 that you had proposed, and then in listening to you guys chat, I suddenly realized that maybe you were including the concession stand part plus the outdoor space in between and the other space as part of that 2,000. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, at the
Okay.
time, we didn't know, we were just asked
Okay,
what
because
our
2,000,
dream,
that's
what,
a lot of
we were
space.
just asked about it, so once they put it on spec, we were like, wow, it is really big, so of course we scaled it back.
Oh, okay, so you're no longer wedded
Yeah,
to this.
no.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure
Absolutely
that was.
not.
Okay, so, with the space that is here, that you are proposing, the 476, for 30 people, can't you open the doors and use that outdoor space
That's
anyway?
a great point that you're making.
And have more room for your larger events that you envision. And I'm sure Neil could come up with a cool design in order to integrate.
So you kind of bring me to a very, very important point, which is rather than just looking at these, the space within these four walls as the flexible community space, I would suggest to the commission that we look at that entire space.
Yes.
That elevated space is the flexible community space, which would include a concession, it includes a beautiful wraparound deck.
Right.
It includes, to your point, the ability to roll up those doors and kind of open up that space. It's the space between the concession and
So maybe we call all of that the community space, with this being the indoor part of the community space.
I think that's a good way to look at it, yeah.
So those are just my initial thoughts.
I think that's really logical. I think that's really good too. To recognize that it's a continuous space, but can be segregated.
Yeah.
That doesn't even include all the decking, the cool decking
Yeah.
to the gazebo or the gazebo or.
Right, I mean, we still have to get to that, but I think,
Yeah.
But certainly, yeah.
The decking is in the plan.
Well, yeah, but we're talking now about the elevated, to your point, we're talking about the definition of flexible community space, which,
Yeah, but I think we're talking about to resolve what might seem small, that it would open to then a deck, so.
oh yeah, you mean the elevated deck?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the deck around the gazebo and
Oh, okay.
other decks potentially, yeah, exactly right.
What's the current square footage of what's there now?
You should know that,
Yeah, do you know?
the committee members know.
I mean, is this gonna be, I know it's about going up
Yeah, what I can
more
say
than
is
it's
this,
going down?
the current kind of massing model that we're looking at is roughly within the footprint of the existing.
Okay, so
Two
the
buildings.
footprint is not gonna be necessarily larger, it's just going up.
Once again, it's to be determined. I mean, we've learned recently about something called the 5-foot rule, that really is a town requirement. And without getting into too much detail, it's the kind of the town's zoning requirement that if you're building a building adjacent to an existing building, if you don't want it to be considered part of that existing building, you have to build it at least 5 feet away from it. So Neil's kind of a construction approach here, it would be to kind of have this new building kind of essentially hover over the existing buildings as a way of retaining the restrooms at the ground level. So I don't want, once again, I don't want to get into, but yes.
Okay.
It's not, I just don't want
So
somebody to come back to me and say, you said it was gonna be
cantilevering it out?
precisely that, yeah, so.
Sort of cantilevering it out of.
Well, those are details that have to be determined,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
So, point
But-
of information, the two existing buildings sum to 1,865 square feet.
So Mike, the decision what you're really looking on though is the enclosed space, not.
Well, the committee needs to know what we're asking Neil to build. And so Neil has come back to us, you guys have seen the model, with a model that reflects an elevated space with essentially two structures. One would be this enclosed space, that has the ability to be opened with windows, with fresh air going through, and people kind of moving through it. And the other building would be a concession building, which we have to talk about. And at the moment, the current kind of configuration is with a space like a breezeway in between, with a covered breezeway in between those two spaces. So the discussion that's on the table right now is size of
And those two
this.
spaces are the same footprint?
No, the concession space is slightly smaller than, I believe it's slightly smaller at the moment than.
Than
the-
those
than-
two buildings?
No. I suggest we don't get too confused with the two buildings, so,
Two spaces.
so we have those, if you can envision those two spaces as being, let's just make believe, it's this box.
Right,
Two buildings adjacent to one another.
yeah,
What Neil's proposing is something that's gonna essentially sit on top of that,
right,
maybe slightly larger because of the decking that comes over it.
right,
And then on top of that, this is the elevated level, there'll be a space here.
yeah,
So this is facing the parking lot, there'll be a small structure, there'll be a structure here
uh-huh,
that is the concession.
uh-huh,
And actually, this will be roofed, right? So there'll be a structure that'll be the concession, there'll be a structure that'll be the flexible community space, there'll be a space in between.
right,
This is looking south,
yeah,
so you've got breezes, and then there's a roof above that.
sure, that's what I was envisioning.
And that's essentially
It's just
within the same
basically
footprint as the
same
existing
footprint.
buildings,
Okay, that's what
roughly
I'm
speaking,
doing.
yeah.
Both-
I mean, we're working
both
very
within
hard
the
to kind of,
Same footprint.
right. And also, by the way, it's roughly, if we go with a flat roof, which is to be determined, and it has to do with kind of the vernacular that we ultimately build in, that's only roughly 4 feet higher than the existing structures.
Okay, I'm just gonna interrupt for 1 minute. Erica says she has to actually leave to take a business call, with Asia. So, we'll still have a quorum to vote, but I just wanted to get your general thoughts in terms of,
I think I recognize that we're trying to still be flexible to a lot of design issues. So maybe moving past that for the moment, I think the conversation tonight is really more about the space considerations,
Correct.
right? And obviously we have several different options. Are we taking a vote on which specific one we want to recommend for tonight?
No, I think we're taking, what we
Or an
would like,
indication.
what we would like, what the committee would like from the commission would be a sense of the size directionally. So you don't have to tell me 476 square feet. I would, if you were to tell the committee 500 square feet or less, I think that's something we can
around
work
the
with.
paddle hut, half the size of the
The longer-
paddle
Judging
hut.
by the designs that I've seen, I'm very comfortable with 500 and below. I think it gives us enough space. I know more can be better, but judging by the schematics that we've seen, it can entertain enough space to be considered a useful public space while still, I think, not perhaps being a gargantuan, overwhelming structure. In my opinion, that's my vote.
Well, it sounds like we've got flexibility too.
Yeah. Within that.
Well, once again, if you do kind of, back to your point, Amy, if you look at kind of, if you consider all of that space as flexible community space, certainly, you know, between June and, you know, winter months, you've got kind of a lovely space that you're kind of
So
able to
maybe I
get
should
in.
caveat 500 of interior space.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Enclosed space.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
You want me?
Lucy, Louise?
How, in the off summer months, how does the community space relate to the concession area? Does it?
Is it dependent on it?
Yeah, I mean, do you have sinks, stoves, or whatever? If you wanted to, cook something, are you gonna have?
That's gonna be a design.
It's a good it's a great question, and it's really to be determined.
But if it's on the other side and you have this open section in the middle of the winter, that's not really gonna work too well.
I mean, you're certainly dealing with weather conditions.
No, I think the question is more, can people come in and use that kitchen space?
No, I
think,
understand, yeah.
I think we have to control, you know.
I think Mary Louise, I think your point was, like, if somebody's prepared something, they've got to take that out of that space and bring it over to the other space.
Correct,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's not that far, by the way, it's probably 10 feet, 8 feet maybe, you know, so you're kind of, you gotta go outdoors certainly, but from one space to another, yeah.
I don't understand why somebody would be using the kitchen.
If you were having a
Well,
party.
if you were
Yeah,
having a
maybe
party.
catered event or something.
Weed, I thought it was just a refrigerator and a sink, and maybe a microwave.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that would just suffice, a fridge and sink.
That's what you got at the paddle lot.
Yeah, we don't have anything, it's within the space.
So-
I think ideally, Neil could design it to be, you know, a room off of that, so it's not part
Yeah,
of.
or maybe even something where, because if you, I mean, I guess what I've learned through this process is if you have a concessionaire And I would urge, we have to get to this point, that if we do have a concession, I think the town should own the equipment in the concession facility as opposed to a concessionaire owning it. But if you have a contract with a concessionaire, maybe once again, you do that annually, so at the end of the season, it expires, now you have access to that space, and you don't have somebody saying, I don't want anybody in my kitchen, I have my stuff there.
Right.
And then, to Mary Louise's point, then you have access, you know, and maybe, I would recommend you charge something, you charge an upcharge for someone who wants to use the kitchen if you want. Those are all things you can get to, but I think, you know, they're fairly close proximity. You're absolutely right, some of them have to go from one, you know, open the door, go through and go into the other space with whatever they're prepared. I think, having said that, I think a lovely aspect of at the moment what we're contemplating is that breezeway, that open space in between, you know, especially in kind of the summer season. You know.
You're also gonna have decking in addition to this, correct?
Yes, yeah. I mean,
Right,
basically,
around-
it's gonna
around the
be,
flexible space.
Around it, okay.
I guess we don't have Marcus here, I'd be happy to do a picture here, but it's basically, you know, it's like this. It's the community space here, the concession area here, and this is all covered. You know, that
Okay.
kind of thing, with some decking.
So out of season, the concession area would probably be shut down.
Yeah, well, it would definitely be shut down, but
Okay.
I think it would be up to,
We would have to decide if we wanted to make the kitchen facilities available for
for use, for anybody who's
individuals to
renting.
use, or for an individual, for instance, to bring in a caterer to use the kitchen to cater their party. But again, that gets down to, you know, that would generally be, I think, for something that's more elaborate. Which we're not necessarily looking at this
And
space.
have people, I mean, it seems to me Weed Beach has been, the paddle has been working really well. If people
Oh, yeah.
wanted that, more kitchen.
I think if we could go back and design it based on what we know today, you would have a room off of it that you could put your catered food and not right in the midst of the space.
Right.
So I think we've learned a lot going forward, and, you know, there's not enough storage, and, you know, you can't push away the additional tables that are littered amongst the room.
Right, because there's nowhere for them to
Right, so we'll have to
Yeah,
give this to
I mean, here
Neil
we'd
so
have
that we have the
storage,
design
tables
to the
and
right.
things, yeah.
right.
Okay, so. What did I say, what did I want to say? So it sounds like, we're having a discussion around whether, give or take, 500 square feet, is appropriate for the size of
The closed space.
the closed space for directionally provide to the building committee, that would be the general amount of space that we would go.
Yep.
You know, supplemented by decking, as opposed to something twice as large.
Yeah, and that gets us into the kind of the territory of what you guys have seen in terms of the model. In terms of footprint, once again, it's,
So it's roughly a third for the concession area, a third for the community space, and then another third for the open area, roughly.
yeah, I would say it's probably biased a little bit more towards the flex, you know, the enclosed community space, and a little less on the kitchen, and the concession, and the, you know, the other space. With the concession, the concept would be, you know, it's that little pavilion, it's kind of off, you know, on the parking lot side, that will have like a roll-up window, and there's a, you know, there's a kitchen facility and that roll-up window, so it's, you know, it's big enough to accommodate that.
So people would access the concession stand
Through the roll-up window.
through this open area?
Yes, when it's open, yeah.
Okay.
They'd kind of walk up to it, either from the beach or from a flexible community space.
Would the concession area have to be as large as 500 square feet, or 600 square feet?
No, we're not talking about the,
I'm sorry, say.
I think what Mary Louise is, if you look at the footprint of the two buildings now, I think she's saying if you just go up one level, can you kind of mentally whack up the three different pieces about that? It wouldn't be exactly a third,
Yeah,
a third, a third,
ballpark.
but I think that's what she's saying is ballpark, that the concession
Yeah.
would probably need a little less, and maybe
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
the open area would, so
Yeah,
it wouldn't be
Neil-
exactly a third, but.
Or would you add the extra space onto the community area? In other words, what I'm saying is, would you need as large a concession area as?
I think another way to answer the question is, if we're saying that the flexible community space is roughly now I'm really kind of out on a limb here, but I'm gonna go there anyway. if we're saying this is roughly 500 square feet, then directionally, we're saying that the concessions facility might be 350 square feet. And the space in between, the footprint of it would be, you know, not 500 square feet. Is that helpful to you? I'm not sure I'm following your question otherwise.
I'm just suggesting, could not the concession area be reduced size-wise and added on to the community area?
Even more than it is.
Say to go to 600 square feet rather than 500.
I think that's gonna be a design element, because I think we're gonna have to get guidance from the professionals on if you're gonna have a reasonable snack bar.
Yeah.
What is the equipment that they need, and what's the size, and then I'm sure there's code issues in terms of how
Yeah.
much space
So
they need
just
to move, so.
as an extension of Mary Louise's, if I can just extrapolate out, maybe what we're not really voting on is the size of this closed space. What we're really voting on is whether we're basically gonna keep the second floor footprint in line with the first floor. It's not, we're not really voting on whether this is a closed space, right? It's that whole second level. Right?
To some degree.
Right? And because this is gonna be changed depending on whether we want the concession stand smaller or larger, whether the building committee does. So for us to say if we want it under 500 square feet, it doesn't, they'll decide that later. You just
Here's what
want
I'd
us
like
to
see.
say,
Yeah.
it,
Can I suggest this?
Yeah.
You're onto something. Can I suggest this? I think if you were to guide us, the building committee, and say roughly 500 square feet, I'm absolutely comfortable, and I have my colleagues here with me, taking Mary Lou's kind of concept in consideration, and if that could be a little bigger and something smaller, you're right on, but I think I'd rather walk away from this conversation having a better sense of that space than just kind of asking the commission to say we're roughly within that footprint, if that's okay with you guys. And the reason for that is because I think I'd rather be more specific than not. And I'd rather get that direction from you guys rather than leaving it up to a discussion
I
that's
think
gonna
it's
take
hard to say
It's
because
really hard
I
without
don't know
seeing
how
the
big
It's
they.
even more difficult for the committee to say. If it's hard for you guys, I can tell you it's gonna be more difficult for the
Well, I
committee
think
to
that
come up
Neil
with.
has to say, look, this is the minimum we can
He's
use
done
for
that.
the concession stand.
Well, he's done that with, he's done that, I think.
Okay, and so he said the minimum is 500?
He's designed a concession facility that, from his perspective, is appropriate for that space.
Right, okay, so within the correct square
Correct.
footage, right. And he said, okay, this is how big the so that's your answer to Mary Louise. Look, Neil, the architect, has said, this is the space that we want, it's relatively a third, and that's what they need. So then it becomes whether we want to encroach on the open space, the closed space into the open space and make the closed space 600, or a little bigger and the closed space smaller, because the concession stand is an absolute and it needs to be that size based on the architect's recommendation.
Is that a definite?
Is what a definite, the size of the concession.
Yeah.
Well, he's not here, and I don't have an accurate answer for that. But
So you'd like to see it a little bit larger? Space.
Yeah, what I would suggest to you is,
Yeah, a little bit larger. A little bit.
so then why don't you guys just vote on 600 square feet?
Yeah, 600 square feet long.
I mean, I
As long
don't.
as it's in the same footprint, I think that's what we
Yeah,
care about, same
exactly.
footprint of what the building is now.
Correct.
And that's what you've established as the case?
I mean, I don't think we can be pinned to an exact amount of square feet, I mean, we're not architects.
No, we're not, but basically it's in the
Well,
footprint.
but you know it's roughly 30 people, and you know roughly what the furniture configuration might look like. I mean, those that information is presented to, we can bring that back to the commission if you'd like, but I'm not sure what we're leaving here with then, what the building committee is leaving with.
Well, I think here, I mean, you're representing, do we want something as big as the paddle hut? I think that was one of the asks, is do we wanna go as big as the paddle house? And I think what I'm hearing is the answer is no.
Well, because if we go as big as the paddle hut, that will mean if you add the concession stand, we have to increase the footprint, and we don't wanna increase the footprint.
Right, now there is one other factor here, and the other factor is.
Wait, is that correct? If we go with the size of the paddle hut, we'll have to increase the
Oh,
footprint.
absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so we've decided, have we decided we don't wanna increase the
We haven't voted, but I think that's what I'm hearing.
right? We wanna stay within the footprint, right? And you're saying we
It's up to you
can,
guys. I
we
mean,
can
that's-
do that. I mean, I know, I'm just,
Yeah,
but in order to do that, you're recommending doing this 500 or 600?
Well, what I'm recommending is Neil has, based upon initial conversations that we've had at the committee level, Neil has come back to us with a proposal. You guys have seen that model.
Yes.
What that model is essentially a flexible community space that is roughly 500-ish square feet.
Okay.
So, certainly, if we're asking him to make that a little larger, we can do that. Something might have to give.
Right.
I don't know what he'll have to give. I mean, something might have to give. I mean, the other way we can do this as a commission is to say 500 square feet, and if you can make it bigger, make it bigger. Because we know what 500 square feet looks like.
Does that work?
I think the sense of you guys is you'd like to have the ability to have a larger space, to accommodate more people.
Yeah. I don't know whether I would or not, I don't know. I just wanna stay within, because he needs to tell me
He needs to
what
tell
he
you
can do.
Well, okay. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
so I think that works,
Yeah.
if you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that works.
If you're saying you've had difficulty storing tables and things like that, if you want the space to be flexible, is there a space?
Yeah, the lower level will be storage.
So
This
you-
is an elevated space. We don't have a lower level at Weed,
Okay.
so we have a lower level.
Okay, so you could use that.
Ample
That's storage, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. We're
Yeah.
not thinking of that.
The only wild card here, and this is to be determined because we're still in this kind of initial phase of what Neil is doing, which includes also information gathering, is there's a slight possibility that we may not be able to have restrooms on the ground level. There are still some FEMA requirements that we're attempting, and Neil's attempting, and we've sat with Jeremy also, and we're attempting to kind of understand how potentially we could kind of work within those guidelines. One aspect of those guidelines is that, FEMA basically kind of calls for having the ability in a kind of a flood condition to have water kind of ultimately come, flow below a structure. So if we have a restroom below the elevated structure, potentially that could be an impediment to the flow of water. There potentially are ways around that. Now, we're in a VE zone. If we weren't in a VE zone, all we have to do is deal with flood vents, but there may be additional things we'll have to do to accommodate that. So my only point there is, we'll come back if that's an issue, but that has bearing potentially on what we can do on that elevated level as well. And we'll have restrooms at the elevated level anyway, but.
He really was supposed to design two buildings, one new and one renovated, right? He was supposed to give the committee both alternatives.
Which he's done, right? Yeah,
So,
yeah.
just saying.
But what we're talking about now, and we're getting a little off track here, is just kind of a reflection of what it might look like if it was an entirely new structure without restrooms at ground level. But so it's up to you guys. If you wanted to, I would urge you not to kind of say. I think if you were to say 500 square feet, and if you can make it larger, then make it larger. Keeping within the footprint of the existing, as closely within the footprint of the existing structure as possible. I would feel better putting on my committee hat, taking that back to the committee then. But I'm mindful of what you're asking for. You're basically saying, okay, we hear you, but if you can make it bigger, make it bigger. Did I get it right?
Yes.
Okay.
See?
I agree. No, I like the flexible option, and I heard Mary Louise's comment, and I think Mike will go back and do a good job, and just give a little slightly flexibility, but within the footprint, boundaries.
You good?
Thanks for all your hard work.
Oh. No one should be allowed to have that much fun.
I know, no big deal.
Okay, so are we ready for a motion to provide direction to the building committee to work with Neil to design the interior flexible community space of approximately 500 square feet,
Let's call it enclosed.
enclosed?
Yeah. Yeah, as opposed to interior, but
Interior.
same thing, but just I think enclosed.
To accommodate the concession stand, the open space, storage, bath, whatever there is to stay within the existing footprint, generally within the existing footprint.
Yes.
Okay. And that to the extent that the design can pull a little from the concession or whatever to slightly expand the enclosed space,
Yes.
that would be of interest to us.
Mhm.
Is everybody comfortable with that wording?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, all those in favor?
Do we need to second the motion?
Yes, sorry. Thank
I
you.
second.
Okay, now in favor. Okay. All right, Mike, is that all you needed from us?
And we have to be mindful, I didn't realize the custodian basically is only on till 10.
Okay, then.
Because during our last meeting, he
Right,
basically wasn't even
right.
gonna get paid.
Right.
So we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mental
Okay,
health.
so maybe-
Thank you, guys. I mean, I know these
Okay.
kind of.
Well, you have to go do your thing.
All right, then what I would propose we do with the agreement of the members is flip the order on the agenda and flip over and move into public comment now. As we remember, the audience has been born with us for all of this time. And then, to the extent we're able to, we will get updates on the other parks improvement projects, and if not, then we'll,
Yeah, I'll text him that we're
Yeah.
being mindful of it.
yeah, we'll move to them next month. Okay, so I need everybody, a motion to switch the agenda, I think. Do I? Or can I just switch it? Sure. Okay, just switch it. Okay,
Yeah,
so we will move into public comment at this time.
Oh.
No, it is.
Should I just call the list? Roger Gartner? Roger? 1941 Post Road? Okay.
It was Roger Freight.
Oh, thank you. That does not look like an F. No. And then we have another Roger Freight. I've got the son. Okay, Bonnie.
Bonnie Freight also.
Oh my God, Vincent.
Okay, here.
Yes, there goes 69 Salem Streets.
This evening's agenda listed decisions for the Pear Tree Beach Improvement Project, and it's a shame the building committee wasn't originally named the Improvement Committee to consider alternatives to truly improve the Pear Tree Beach experience. By deciding to build, the committee is forced to a preordained outcome. You may not realize it, but you're going to end up building a Norotan Yacht Club. You're going to build one, just something like that, just across the bay, and something that will cost around $6 million. Because the Pear Tree is even lower, more prone to flooding, and with unsupported base of sand and mud, the committee should expect really terrific engineering expenses. 500 square feet, 2,000 square feet. The engineering expenses of maybe millions. You divide it, and you'll end up with a ridiculous figure per square foot if you're down to a hut. Biggest question: what unmet need does Darien have to consider such a building? Making a $6 million building, make it a $3 million building. What unmet need does Darien have? Really, I'm going to get political because I'm going to call out Jamie Stevenson, our first select person, for encouraging this committee, this Parks and Recreation, encouraging this project, despite complete disregard, despite the disregard of the public's 100% resistance coming from neighbors protecting their own. That's the way you assume. The Pear Tree neighbors are protecting their own, and that's their only motive. It appears that this committee has the notion that there are private clubs in Darien, and that there are some people in Darien who don't belong to these private clubs, who then would like a municipal beach club. But my Darien High School class of 1969, it celebrated its 50th reunion at the Tokenique Beach Club 2 weeks ago. 150 people. It's a bigger venue than what you're thinking of right now, but ultimately with the engineering costs and all that, that's probably where you're going to be. Something that can handle that type of group. Well, either way. The town's private clubs make public events possible at their facility with just one member's sponsorship. So I'm not sure whether Jamie or you or anyone understand that you know, this town has great facilities to entertain on the beach, and all it takes is one of the club members to sponsor it. But deciding to go upscale, because for $6 million, where else can you go? The committee forgets about the day in and day out food customer at the beach, who will be that child in a wet bathing suit, forced to put on shoes and shirt, because that's what they do at the club. They'll make it, that's what they'll do here. Climb the stairs, more likely play with that elevator. That'll be unsupervised, unless you get it supervised. Enter an air-conditioned room. Oh, by the way, you don't know it yet. It will be air-conditioned. With that wet bathing suit, which makes it very cold, just to get that hot dog. But you could solve that. You could solve that. You could have that open snack bar down below with a server ordering up to the kitchen above to send it down in the dumb waiter. And that brings up the best word for this whole project. Dumb. And further study of it. Dumber.
So we're limit it now, because
Matt, we have 2 minutes before we're supposed to be out of here, so.
I just got each comment.
Can I make a comment?
Do we have other, are we
Is
going
there,
in order of the list?
I didn't know you were supposed to be on a list to comment.
That's fine.
Rosemary Reardon?
I will pass to Scott.
Okay. Oh, Scott Reardon.
I'm, surf. I'm glad you got that. So in any case, I'm really concerned about this project. As I was listening to this discussion, and of course these kind of things always go on. They have to be sorted out, the discussion that you had in, let's say, the last 30 minutes or so. But I thought to myself, and my background happens to include real estate development. I work with the development side of the largest real estate investment trust, independent real estate investment trust in the country at one point. So I dealt with the commercial and residential real estate issues. And if you all were my best friend and the TV was turned off and we were talking and it was off the record, I would say you've got to work out what the objective and the programs are, because you're chasing your tail. And like I say, if that's what I would say if you were my best friend. So just for what it's worth, you really got to work that out. And that's because, if you recall prior meetings, Neil Huck brought up, we've got to, we don't know what the purpose is here. So he brought it up, but asking Neil won't solve it for you. His asking you won't solve it. You've got to go out to the public. Okay, and for what it's worth, my sense is that this is being done, and I know the TV's on and all the rest of it, but it's being done in a very isolated way. When you talk with people, they don't know that this kind of a 2-story project and so on and so forth is being planned for Pear Tree Point Beach. Okay, they do not know it. When they hear about it, they are shocked to hear about it. Okay, for what it's worth. Along with that, separate from that, there are a whole bunch of issues that have come up in regard to maintenance and year-round and all the rest of it. So it's very important to look at the operating costs. the operating costs of a lot of these things are quite considerable. Bear in mind, if you're gonna have, as you brought up, you know, your own equipment rather than sort of a concessionaire's equipment, then that means you gotta maintain it, you gotta contract out with somebody else to clean it, like Airbnb, you got to have somebody else to do the cleaning and the expense, because you're not gonna, you know, rely upon the renter of the space to clean up after themselves and it meets specs and all the rest of it for food, except food preparation, and then you know, all the rest of that. So as a result, it doesn't mean it's gonna be a net profit source as well on an annual basis. So it's really, really important to work and think these things through, you know. You know, as I looked at this, 6-8 months, something, probably more than that, you know, maybe it was last year. Weed Beach seems, either the expansion of that indoor space or creation of some other indoor space on a geography there that is orders of magnitude bigger than Pear Tree Point Beach. And you've got trees, you've got screening, so it doesn't interfere with the neighborhood. And by the way, I'm not affected with views and the rest of it. I'm here because I think it just doesn't make sense. But if you want to do this, then weed seems so much more suitable. And that's it.
Thank you.
Oh, Scott Reardon, R-E-A-R-D-O-N. I did have one question. What do you, as commissioners, perceive? What are you hearing back from the public? And I mean that as an actual hearing. What are you actually hearing quoted back to you when you talk with friends and neighbors and so on and so forth? I mean, are you actually getting positive feedback? I don't mean to load it up and say, well, like, people have to think like I do.
Well, yeah,
So
this is
I
public
really am
comments.
interested in the comments that
So,
you're hearing.
well, we do have one printed here that we can refer to this evening, but we're not in a position to answer
Yeah.
questions. But do we have additional public comment?
There was Diane.
And that was me, just a Tanya.
Oh, okay, and then I think the Baxters, and then, somebody at 22 Lynn Court, maybe it's Christine Ferguson? That's it.
Okay. All right, then quickly, disorganized. Because we do have an agenda, and I know we're over a lot of time from the custodian. We do have, and this will address the question that was raised, we do have one letter here, and I'm not saying we only got one letter because all of us obviously talk to our constituents and our neighbors and our friends. But this individual took the time to write to the commission and I believe the committee members. And she did say, as a lifelong resident of Darien, I am much in favor of transforming Pear Tree Beach into a more fun destination for all the families in Darien. Having watched your meeting on Channel 79, it seems as though a few on your committee that are clearly against any changes are hijacking the process. Most people I've talked to are excited about having a place where they can go on the water that has more than just a snack bar and bathroom. Thank you for taking on this job, and hopefully some of the negative Nellies on your commission will begin, I think it should say buy-in, will buy into the project in terms of the benefits for the entire town. So that is written on our university. So there's no more public comment, so we will close that portion. Pam, I guess we've gotten your packet with your update.
Yeah, my report is self-explanatory.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything that I need to highlight.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing I wanted to bring up really quickly is that,
I have some family business that I just want to share.
okay, we don't have, okay, we don't have everybody here now, but we had talked about scheduling a, Saturday where we could tour at least some of the parks, and have Pam and hopefully Jim Flynn, take us around and really, so we can, see some of the maintenance issues or whatever. The date I'd like to propose, would be to get enough committee members and we'd like to include the parks. Enough commission members, and also, of course, we would like to invite the members of the Parks and Recreation Committee of the RTM to join us, would be the morning of Saturday, September 14th, if we can get enough people. So I think I'll shoot an email out to everybody, And see how that works. The alternate would be the following Saturday, which would be the
21st.
21st.
And
But you're not available.
How about the
That was the
28th?
problem. I'm out of town for a wedding.
Yeah, I can't do any of those.
Okay.
the Friday night was one we're thinking of too.
No, I said, we'll hear that we can do this.
Gotcha.
Okay,
So
yeah.
we can throw out some dates and I can
Okay.
send them out to
Even
everybody.
October. I think it's good that everybody can come.
I think that we're never gonna get everybody, so we're just
Right.
gonna have to see if we can get a majority, unfortunately, is the problem. Yeah, so, let's see what we can do, okay. So I'll send out, a couple of dates, so we've unfortunately got a lot of limitations in September and October as well. It's ridiculously sad. Okay, and Pam, you had one other thing?
Yep, two. One was that I wanted to bring up in October, our meeting's October 16th, I'm away that week. I either can try to have Jim Cobbin replace myself on that 16th, or we can move the meeting to a special meeting October 23rd. We can decide that in September.
Let's decide that in September.
Okay, I just want to put it out there. And then, I have these, I need the commission to, the Nature Center had, gone to P and Z and submitted an amendment to their special permit. And with that, P and Z needs a referral from the commission. It's quite significant changes to their special permit. So what I did was I didn't make the whole packet because it was a lot of information, but I think
Wait,
you'll.
this isn't just a little conversation.
No, she's just telling us we're gonna need to talk about it in the future.
Oh, good.
Right,
I
not
thought you
tonight,
were
not
suggesting
tonight.
tonight, I was
I'm
like,
handing these out so that.
look at Mary Louise.
No,
It's homework, Amy.
Well, actually, that's, you know what,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
this one's mine, it's real.
Real official.
So, I'm handing these out to you so that you have them, you can take a look at them so we can discuss it in September.
Okay, good.
Because they need a referral from the commission.
You
And
buried the lead.
there's some concerns there in
Okay.
terms of the.
Okay, and there's enough cover material here that
Yes.
we'll understand what it is
Yes.
they're asking.
Yes, because everything they're asking for is in blue, there's changes in blue, on the next page. Well, it didn't come out that way, you know.
So how are we gonna know?
Right, well, you see, because it's cut out. I'll send you the blue one. I thought it came out in
Okay.
color, but it didn't. You will see right here, look at, Lori, I'll send these out to you this way, okay? So, because they're looking to September 24th. I just got it today. This isn't something that,
So they're looking for more parking. Is that what
they're looking for quite a bit of additions to their
Can I ask a
special.
really dumb question? Why would they have gone to PNC without coming and talking to us first?
This is the first I'm seeing of it.
That seems
And
totally
who's making this request?
backwards.
Layla and the Nature Center.
Oh, this is coming from the Nature Center.
Yes.
I see, okay. Did you get that? This is coming from the Nature
Nature Center.
Center. The Nature Center went to P&Z.
Right.
Yes. And they actually went, they were on the agenda for PNC,
Yeah, they're on the agenda for September 24th.
and they haven't come to us yet.
Okay.
P&Z sent it to me.
Bad
That's
move
a
right from the
little,
get-go.
yeah. That's,
Yep, they read the town code that says we have sole authority over Wood Park's property. Do they read property? I do read the rules, it really
and
helps.
so PNC hasn't met with them yet.
No, they just received their application. So
Okay. So does should P&Z not meet with them before they meet with us?
Well, P&Z asked for a referral from the commission.
So basically they're
based on this.
saying
They don't know what to do because they need the commission to say, weigh in on this.
Okay, so basically that the P and Z won't take it up even though it just says commission hearing on or after, they won't take it up until we've weighed in.
Right.
Okay.
So the commission,
Okay, so what's the deadline for us to review this?
well, I
There's no
figured
deadline, that's the balls in our
our
court.
meeting is September 17th. I figure we would,
Can we ask Leila to come and present this to us?
Bare minimum.
Yeah, I would think so.
And
Have you
it
got-
may
you-
be
she
extensive
didn't
enough
call
that
you?
we wouldn't be willing to vote that night.
You've got it, Surprises me.
Yeah, no, it surprised me too. I was surprised, because I
mean,
had just met with her,
Maybe
we
it's
had a long
something that we wanna
discussion.
have a public hearing on, I mean, we have to. Interesting.
You'll know more when you look through it, and
We'll have to consider this in the context of a master plan. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Pam.
So, yeah, you're welcome. Dun-dun.
I know, right?
Pam, just take care of it, will you?
So I just have
Yes.
two, my things are really small, but important. So, I've been thinking a lot about the pollinator pathway, people who came to visit us. And I would like if we could have, Pam, if you could look into and just sort of give us an update on how we treat our parks in terms of pesticides and herbicides, so we can understand where we are. And if you would, move in the direction of researching whether we can eliminate those things.
I've had many deep conversations with Jim Flynn about that.
Great.
Why don't we put it
So-
on next month's agenda?
Okay, that would be great.
Because I do
For
like,
you.
that was on my list of things I wanted to circle back
Because
about.
my personal feeling is we should really move towards a fully,
I think we should ask Jim Flynn to attend next month.
okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Because I think you should hear it from him, why we only spray once per year, once. And his background and experience as to why he
Great,
thinks that that's,
a good
he's
idea.
not breaking any rules, state rules by any means.
Yeah, but
But,
my impression is that the schools don't spray at all.
They don't.
So
Right.
if the
So he
schools
can
are
let him
spraying,
explain
then our
his-
parks,
yes, right.
and they have fields that people play on too, so.
Right.
And I haven't heard of anybody having a problem falling over a weed. So let's just get educated on it.
Sure.
And I think we should consider it
And if
as
he
an
can't
important
come, if
mission
he
of the
can't come for
commission.
whatever reason, I'll have him write up
Okay,
exactly
that's good.
his take on that, so we can read it.
And then I have one other little thing that somebody came up to. I think we've got one picnic table by the concession stand at Weed Beach, is that correct? How many, by the concession stand?
I'm not certain, sometimes people will move them, or I'm not certain.
So, someone just made a request to me that I ask if we could get another picnic table put by the.
Well, we just put 6 new ones.
I know, but they're on the other
Yeah, so we could
spot.
actually.
So that's what I said.
Sure.
I
You can
said
move
they're on the
ones
other
if you
side,
want.
bring your sandwich on, and she said it'd be great if they were near the concession stand, if you could just put another one.
Okay.
Just throwing it there.
Yeah, I think that's very doable.
Okay, that's it for me.
Pam, do we get a report on what Down Under did money-wise?
Yes.
And also, how many people used our beach from outside, you know?
Yep, we have all that, we got that last year too.
Yeah, I think there was information in your report on, I think, ticket sales or parking pass sales for the year, so that
Right.
gives us a good indication.
That's in your report that was
Yes.
here.
Or Jim's
no.
report, or, no,
Right.
I don't think it was in Jim's.
No, because there's a special entrance fee for the kayaks.
Non-residents.
Right, they go
Oh,
in,
for
if
the
they're on a
kayaks,
list
you
for the
mean.
kayaks.
I'm sorry, I thought you
No,
meant
so
just.
the kayaks, if they're on a list, they go in to go to the kayak
But
facility.
then they can spend the day at the beach.
No, that's not supposed to spend the day at the beach, but
That's
you have to
interesting.
check that.
Mhm.
Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, we can.
Did they have a better season this year than last?
When we first chatted with them, Jim and I were very surprised at the initial reaction to their season, which was not very good. And then only a few weeks later, then the report was very good. But of course, the summer weekends were excellent. They were excellent. It was a very, very nice summer. So we're waiting for the final. Yeah, it seemed so glum that we were thinking they may not come back. But so we'll see how it ends up at the end of the summer.
I'm just curious as to whether, how well or not well they were doing
Right.
was based on how many other people had their own paddleboards and so on that were being stored there and they didn't need to rent from them.
Right.
Just curious.
It seemed to me that it was glum, and then it picked up and it was really good, so I really
Well, it
just
also
assumed
rained
it was-
all June.
It did in June, but it was a really beautiful July, and it
For
was
sure.
beautiful
So maybe
August
that's
so
why the
far,
numbers
so,
will come in better.
yeah.
I wonder if cost has some bearing on it.
Well, cost, they had a big upfront cost,
No, I mean the cost to the public.
to the public.
To rent a kayak.
No,
as
I
an
mean,
example.
they did do okay the first 2 seasons in order to come back, right? And, you know, we were only charging them 5%, we went up to 10% this summer. We'll see. I'll give you the full report when I get it. But I think we should wrap it up because of the custodian.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, can't you stay a little longer?
Let's not
But
get
we only
paid.
missed this then.
We didn't get the update on the other parks projects.
All right, that's all we missed, was the perks.
Madam
I mean,
Chair,
there was a
think you-
lot. No, it was a lot.
I think you
Each just.
You need a motion to adjourn.
We need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? All in the
Aye.
last?